Hi, and welcome to the most complete guide on agentic workflows for businesses. Now, agentic workflows have the potential of fully reshaping how our economy works. However, not so many people are talking about them, know how these things are built, or how to make money with them. But this course fixes that. So here is what you're going to learn. What an agentic workflow actually is, the difference between AI automation and true agentic systems, why agentic workflows are likely to disrupt a large part of the next stage of our economy, and then we will go into building mode. So you will learn how to build these things, how to properly set up your workspace from the ground up. We'll build 5 agentic workflows step by step, starting simple and increasing complexity each time. I'll walk you through Antigravity and give you a proper platform walkthrough. I'll introduce you to the framework that I use, the RBI, so rules, brain, and implementation. We'll cover what self-healing systems are, so when workflow detects errors and then improve themselves automatically. We'll see how you can put these workflows in the cloud, and at the end, we will talk about parallelization. And if you don't know who I am, I'm Joe. I'm an ex-senior manager in big tech, and over the past 5 months, I've helped more than 50 businesses transition to AI, scaling my own AI agency to almost 6 figures. And I'm telling you this because I want to make it clear, this course will have a business focus, even though you're gonna learn everything from the foundation up. And the reason is because one of the things that I struggled the most when I had to get started was the loop of infinite learning without ever building something that actually delivered any business result. So this course will fix that. And my intent with this is to make you future-proof and ensure that as many people as possible are ready for what's about to come in our economy. With that being said, get comfortable and let's dive straight in. Let me start immediately by setting some initial expectations that this is a business course. And this will most likely be the most practical business course that you will find out there, because my intent by the end of this course is for you to be able not only to build these things, but also to have all of the information that you need, whether you are a consultant, whether you are an AI agency owner, whether you are a business owner, to start and go and consult and implement these things in other businesses. Now, in particular, what we will focus on will be building agentic workflow that are extremely useful for B2B businesses. These are the same agentic workflow that I do implement with my own AI agency, and these are actually agentic workflows that move the needle. In particular, an onboarding email for any new client that just started working with our company. Then we will build a lead generation agentic workflow, where I will teach you how you can scrape the web using agentic workflow and how you can connect to third-party tools. Then we will build a proposal generator so that whenever you finish a meeting, you're actually immediately ready to send the proposal. A CRM agentic workflow that we will use in order to learn how we can export our agentic workflows in the cloud. And you're going to be able not only to trigger these manually, but also to have schedule-driven triggers and event-driven triggers. And lastly, we're going to connect this CRM automation with another agentic workflow that takes care of unpaid invoices. And automatically, according to the amount of days that this invoice is overdue, it will send emails to your customers. My second intent is to actually change your life, because whenever I started studying how the market is behaving right now, it was really eye-opening, and I want to show you something. And I want this course to have the same impact in your life, right? So what are we seeing right here? With the orange line, we are seeing basically the S&P 500 trend, right? So we know that from 2000, it continuously increased, and then here it skyrocketed. And it will continue, by the way, to grow more and more unless we have a paradigm shift in our economy. And the blue line is the job openings of the US market, right? So US is a very interesting economy, and we should always keep an eye because it tends to predict what will happen in the global economy. So what we see is that before 2022, the blue line and the orange line were kind of following the same trend, right? And then in 2022, something happened. So we start having a big dip. And most likely, this dip will continue more and more. And the disparity between these two lines will continue increasing. And why is that? If you remember, in 2022, let's go back with our history, ChatGPT was introduced to the mass market, right? To the world. And for those of you who don't know, ChatGPT, the GPT thingy was being studied before in some research, in some labs, But then eventually it was just fine-tuned, without going into details, to a chatbot, which is the ChatGPT that we are actually using. So back then, when this was introduced, then we start seeing that we have less and less openings, but companies are being valued more and more. And why can this happen? Because the productivity per employee is increasing thanks to AI. And by the way, this is just the S&P 500. So we are still waiting, let's say, unfortunately, the impact of AI in the whole market, right? Because big corps tend to have more budget to invest in these things and etc. Now, with this being said, this is why it will change your life forever. It will give you the skills that will help you out in surviving in your future. However, in order for me to be able to achieve that, I need to make sure that every single minute that we spend together has an actual ROI for you. And with that being said, it's important that you understand that there are some foundational concepts that I will need to cover, and I will just cover only those that are relevant for you. And there is a couple of reasons for this. The first reason is regarding the cognitive load. So if you don't have clarity on the things that you are talking about or that someone is explaining you, right? Eventually, your knowledge will do what's happening here on the right-hand side of the graph, and you can expect that you will start learning something. Then you will stall because then one concept is not clear, you're not sure what you're doing or why you're doing this and etc. And so your knowledge will stall. Then eventually it will progress again, but then you realize, oh, one thing was not clear, so you will go down again, and then you will continue proceeding. And this is a very non-efficient way of learning, right? Because specifically for a course, because the intent is actually for you to have this curve as smooth as possible, which basically means that when we start slowly understanding the concept, then when we apply them in practice, this knowledge is just compounding, right? And then we can reach the mastery point much faster than we would reach with the unclear theory. Why is this relevant, by the way, is because AI right now has the so-called overhang capabilities. And let me explain it to you with a simple graph, which is this GIF right here. Now, on the left-hand side, you have what's called the perception of what AI can do from the public. And on the right-hand side, you have what AI can actually do. And why do we have a difference? Because if you think about it, most people are using right now ChatGPT or any sort of other AIs as a simple chatbot and in a very inefficient way. And the reason is that they are asking these LLMs or anything to produce an output. Then they are copy-pasting this output and pasting this somewhere else. Now, this is basically treating our LLM as a third-party tool, right? Like some sort of, I don't know, Chrome extension, integration, whatever. But AI can actually do a lot more. And the ability of you, or actually the difference between the perception of what AI can do and the reality of what AI can actually do, this is called the overhang, which is what you see plotted in the GIF. And if you can position yourself right here, right, basically this called overhang becomes also your ability to make money, because the value that you can provide to a business or that you can implement in your own business is just going to be massively different from the value of your competition. So this is why theoretical concepts are important, because they will help us achieving what we want. Now, also, they will not only help us achieve what we want, but they will make us money, because this overhang capabilities, if we think about it in a broader perspective, right, created a so-called arbitrage window. And if you don't know what this means, arbitrage, and I wrote it right here, is the ability that you have to produce a beneficial outcome for someone. May it be revenue, may it be income, may it be anything else of added value. And if you're learning AI right here, and the rest of the market is learning AI right here, then basically this arbitrage window is your ability to make money. And just as an FYI, this window is closing more and more. And the reason is because businesses and other freelancers or whomever are starting to play around with this technology. But it's also closing because there are courses like mine available for the public that are raising the awareness, right? So the intent of this course is that for those of you who are early watchers, if that's even English, and by the way, I'm Italian, so sorry for this, is for you to be able to develop what I call the AI skills. I don't have a better term for this, don't roast me. Then you're going to be able to build actual business solution, and then eventually you're going to be able to sell them to business. Mind you that the leap that you're going to be doing from here to here has nothing to do with technical knowledge. This is just about how you position yourself and if you can actually explain the value that this technology will deliver. So let me show you immediately what I mean by arbitrage window and why this is so powerful. And I think the best way is just to show you how powerful this thing actually is. So let me start just by typing something of the way of, hey, please start scraping 10 CEOs from the UK in the recruitment industries with employees between 51 and 100. And now the only thing that I will have to do is simply to press enter. And what this will do is it will start initializing the workspace, which is already created, going into my Gemini file.md, which is the architecture that we will talk about later on. So it's the RBI architecture. And then eventually it will start scraping. Now, this is empty. Let me show you once this is populated. And that's it. So with just a prompt, we just got our 10 leads, which are our 10 CEOs from the UK. But not only that, we also have per each one a personalized icebreaker in case we wanted to reach out to them. So for example, hey Paul, love the focus on the prototype builds, also into X, Y, and Z. And by the way, this is taken from LinkedIn. I hope you don't mind, but I spent some time looking through your site, put something together a while ago that might help. So just with one prompt, we're now able to scrape the leads, generate personalized icebreaker, and everything else. And this is actually the true power of agentic workflow. If you build them in a smart enough way, with one prompt, you have automated 90% of a process. Now that we clarified this, let's go a little deeper on what is the actual difference between AI automation and agentic workflow, and why did this create an opportunity for us to make more money in an arbitrage window. So I think I took this picture from somewhere. However, it was a decent enough representation of the point that I want to make. So let's start with human employees, right? So a human, by definition, is highly adaptable and very flexible, because provided that we give this person enough training and etc., the person, generally speaking, is able to adapt according to the context that we have, right? So if I need you to lift a pen, you can lift a pen. If I need you to start sending emails, you can start sending me emails, and so on and so forth. While for traditional software, this was not possible, right? Like you had stuff that were hard coded there, and then if you hard coded that the only thing that this thing should do was like lifting something, then you would only lift something, right? You would not start sending email out of a sudden. Now, with AI automation, these changed because from something that would take a lot of time and it was like rather not so adaptable, we moved to something that would take not so much time for businesses to produce or implement, but that was so flexibility kind of improved in that sense. However, also adaptability in that sense improved, right? Because from one single software that would do one thing, now we could have a couple of automations doing more than one task, right? And if you think about it, actually, let me share. If you think about it, we have what we call vertical AI agents, which is basically the AI automations. And what does vertical mean? It means that if this is the role that the AI agent had, or a human had, right? With an AI agent or an AI automation, we could automate 100% of this, right? We could build an automation that it's so amazing that it would like basically replace the human. So in this case, we would produce what I would call one output of economic impact, because if you have one role, this thing's efficient 100% of it, right? So this is very valuable, right? So we could start producing AI automation for a living, and then we would be producing a lot of values. Now, when we move to agents, and so with agentic workflow, the angle in which we look at all of these things changes a little bit, right? Because we are not only thinking about, okay, I can produce like one automation for one role. But what we're going to do now is that we are looking at more than one role, right? Like, let's imagine that this is every single one of these is a role, and we can have 100 of this, right? So what the agentic workflow now are able to do is that we're now able to automate most of these roles. We can take any example, right? We can take 90%, 50%, and etc. Realistically, we're closer to 90% now than everything. But then what we're doing right now is that we're not automating anymore one role only, but we're automating 100 roles, right? And so here, instead of going to 100% automation, even though we could, we go most likely to 90% of the automation on this. So you can see that the big difference here is that if you start calculating this, here you are producing most likely one unit of economic value, right? So here you automated 1 out of 1. Here you automated 90 out of 100, so which basically means 90, right? So in this case, you automated and produced 90 units of economic value. So this is why the paradigm overall is shifting, because if you build your company in a way that it accommodates these things, then what happens is that humans and so employees can simply become managers of these tools, right? So that's the real power of these things. So we can become more efficient, do things better, because as we will see, these things have the ability of doing the so-called self-annealing process, which basically means improving over time according to their mistakes. And this is where the whole game is played, right? So we're now trying to automate an overall business, and that's the new automation in terms of agentic workflow, rather than going vertical on one specific things, right? So just to make it even more clear, imagine you will have eventually, and let me clear this, you will have eventually your folder where you have your agentic workflow. And instead of having, I don't know, one folder that takes one automation that takes the inbound, then another automation that takes the leads, right? Then another automation that qualifies them, then another automation that inserts them in a CRM, and etc. You will have just one single thing that you are going to be able to replicate across businesses and use it simply by prompting it in natural language. So this whole thing will now contain all of the things that relates to, I don't know, inbound of your customers, right? So we move from 1,000 millions automation to just simply one agentic workflow, okay? Now, let's go also into a bit more detail to understand how are these actually different versus the automation and why the technical buyer is becoming lower and lower. And therefore, your ability to sell these to businesses will be less on how do I produce this stuff, but it will be more on how do I sell this and what are the things that allow me to sell and deliver and explain the value that I am creating. So this is an old automation. This was something that was triggered and without understanding the details of the automation, because our intent is not to be able to produce, this is N8N, things in N8N, in Make.com, in whatever platform. Our intent is to understand how automation as a whole is working and where are we playing a role right now, right? So this automation was working in a way that it would be triggered by some Gmail nodes right here. Then the AI agent would, label the whole thing, and then you would either read the labels, get the message, add another thing, create another label. You would answer to this email if needed, and so on and so forth. But you can understand, even simply by looking at this, that we may take some time to be able to understand what each of these nodes do, right? It might take a little bit of technical knowledge in order to put something together, understand what every single node is doing, how to connect them together, debug in case we were facing errors, and so on, right? Now, in the new way, we just reproduced the same thing that we have here, but with agentic workflow. And so what are we actually doing? We're actually prompting in natural language, and we're just having a list of bullet points, right? So that's that. It's nothing more than this. And then once we prompt it in the right way, that we will cover later on in the course, when we go practical, we can actually see that if we wanted to add one more thing right here, instead of figuring out, okay, what is the next block? How is this block going to be integrated with the rest of the automation, etc.? What I would be doing is that I would simply be adding another bullet point. You literally press enter and you go to the new line, and then you start writing here what you want. So this is actually also the disruption that these agentic workflow are actually bringing to businesses, because what they are allowing is basically you to just type in natural language and have it all sorted out for you or with you. Because then what you're gonna have to do is simply interact with the agent in the same way that you would speak to a person. And so the question now becomes, but why now? Like, why all of a sudden we're talking about agentic workflow? What happened overnight or seemingly overnight that brought us to this situation? To answer that question, we need to look at three different buckets. One is intelligence, one's is tools, and one's is cost. Now, in regard to intelligence, before explaining you what you see in this picture, which is relevant, but I want to make a premise before, I need to explain to you what do people perceive about intelligence overall, specifically when it comes to LLM. So we now think that agentic workflow are such a disruption because, generally speaking, people think that intelligence for this model goes something like this, which means that it improves overnight and you stay up until zero. And one day, boom, these things became so much more intelligent. And all of a sudden, the model did from here to here in just one shot, right? And this is not really the case. And this happens specifically because, rightfully, people are not inside the details of these models. And they just see the end result, or they just see the new application that makes them understand, okay, something happened. The reality is that knowledge progresses sort of linearly, right? But what happens is that at one point, which we can consider like the tipping point, knowledge becomes visible to the majority of people. And all of this path right here, let's say, when we didn't have all of this attention towards, in this case, LLMs, but towards anything, all of this is sort of invisible because all of these improvements happened under the hood. And a great example to make it more clear is either a person playing piano, either boiling water. So a person playing piano, let's imagine that you have your kids or your friend that starts to learn how to play the piano. You will think that they don't know how to do anything, absolutely anything with the piano, and so they will have the same skills that I have, right? So you will not see this, the improvement up until this guy will put together a song, and then you're like, oh my gosh, you became so good all of a sudden, and then it feels like he did this improvement, right? Overnight, bam, bam. But the reality is that it doesn't happen like that. It happens that like she started putting together a few notes. Then few notes started being together, and then eventually it became a decent song, right? Same thing. If you think about how the water boils, we know for a fact that actually, if I draw here my little fire, right, and I draw here my pan, like this, I know for a fact that the temperature inside the pan does this, right? More or less linearly. Like, I don't want to go into engineering course. But what happens is that whenever it reaches a certain threshold, which in our case, it's the 100 degrees, then it becomes visually clear also that the water started boiling and so that the temperature actually went up. And it feels, unless we were putting our fingers inside, as if the temperature started rising all of a sudden, right? So in the same thing actually happens for intelligence. What do we mean by intelligence? We are going to focus on this specific score right here. And to compare apple to apple, I want you to focus on Opus 4.5 and Opus 4.1. And we see that in a benchmark, which is called SWE, which basically is something that allows the LLM to be compared with some software engineer. It's called Software Engineering Benchmark Verified. And what basically this is not some pre-validated stuff, but it's new and novel problems that we're asking LLM to solve, right? And then we're assessing its ability to solve these problems. And once it passes this threshold, which is the 80% threshold, this is a very interesting one, right? Because now it became very, very good. Because basically what happens is that seemingly overnight, we moved from a junior software developer to a senior software developer. And by the way, I tried to read a couple of this stuff and I didn't understand much. Premise is my ability to code is not to the, I'm not a god on coding, right? I am decent. I started it, but I would not be able to solve these problems, probably not even with a tenth of the speed that these things are managing, right? So this is to say they are very smart and they will just become smarter, because if from one release of a new model to another one, the knowledge started increasing like this, right? So it's non-linear for them, then eventually it's very likely that these things will keep on ramping up. And as we know, soon we may also overcome our own ability, right, to interpret stuff. And as you can see, the improvement happens across the board, technically speaking. And in addition to this, they are not only intelligent, but they are also extremely fast. And what are you seeing here? This is a GIF that I took online. It's basically a diffusion LLM. And what we see is that whenever we press generate, we start seeing that the LLM spits out like 500 plus words per minute, right? And we can see it visually. And now if you think about your ability to code or your ability to write, this is orders of magnitude faster. And it's not only this, but the reality is that this is what happens with the things that are accessible to the market. But companies like Google, OpenAI have systems and databases and softwares that allow these things to run much faster. So whenever this technology will drip to the remaining and the rest of the market, agentic workflow and overall the access to this technology will become more and more widespread, right? Because now all of a sudden, it's not like only 10 order of magnitudes, like faster than we are, but it's 1,000. And so it becomes just better, right? The second thing, now we talked about intelligence, it's about tools. And in reality, it's also a bit about frameworks, right? So this is under the tool hat. However, the MCP, for the most techie people, it's a protocol, to be honest. But what is it? Just to make it simple, MCP is a way in which apps talk one another, right? You can call it the English of the app. I'm Italian, I'm talking to you wherever you may be in a language, and this language is a standard that we have in place, at least for now, we have in place in order to communicate. And in the same way that I know that if I speak English, most likely the majority of people watching my videos will understand me, in the same way, apps are using this MCP in order to communicate one another. Now, if you're familiar with AI automation, and if you're not, it doesn't matter, I will explain it to you. Here, instead of the LLM, you can put your platforms, right? So let's imagine that here we have our NA10, right? So this black box or orange box in our case. So what happens is that if we had an automation platform, what we would need to do in order to access these third-party tools right here, so Zapier, YouTube, Slack, and many other, we would need to query and create an API connection to NA10. Basically, this means we need to connect one with another one, right? And what does it mean? It means that if you look at the complexity of this, we have that to the simple platform, which is in this case NA10, we need to have 3 different connections, right? So it's a complex flow because it's at least 3 to 1, just having 3 different platforms. If we have 100, we need to make 100 of these connections. Now, MCP used to suck a lot, to be honest, and now it became decently good fairly recently. And so what does it mean? It means that this protocol started being used and it's now widespread across the ecosystem. And what does it mean? It means that this MCP right here have a way to connect all the remaining apps either natively within the platform, and we will see that Antigravity, for example, which is what we will use, but you can also have the same in Cloud Code and etc. They already have some MCP servers already pre-configured inside, and for those that are missing, we can simply do what we were doing before, and therefore adding another branch, and then we can add our MCP. But the difference, and the main difference is that right now, from this platform that in our case with the new thing with Agentic Workflow will be Antigravity, we will be able to control everything downstream, right? So this is extremely, extremely important. And the important part is that in here, we will have a single API. Okay. Now, the other thing that happened is that we started having frameworks, right? That are actually now widespread, and these frameworks became better and etc. And why is this important? Because if you think about it, LLMs are flexible, right? And what does it mean? It means that they have a certain degree of, let's call it uncertainty or creativity in order to complete a task. And this is great, specifically if you are trying to, automate the creation of an image and where you want to leave the LLM the ability to interpret whatever input you're giving. This is great in case you're trying to write emails, a book, and so on and so forth, right? So you want this degree of variability to be there in some business applications. But in some others, specifically when you're talking about running a business, you can't afford to have this degree of variability. You actually don't want any variability most of the times, right? And why is that? Let's make the example that we are sending a proposal to a customer, okay? So we have step one, right? We want the proposal to have a specific name, right? Step two, we want this proposal to have inside the services. Then step three, we want this proposal to have inside, the price. Step four, we want the proposal to have inside a timeline. And step five, we want this proposal to be, sent to the customer once it's signed, right? To the right customer. Now, let's make the example of having an LLM which has a 10% of possibility of completing the workflow correctly or the step correctly, which basically means that 9 out of 10 times we are very satisfied with the output, right, of the LLM. Now, for businesses, this is a disaster because if you think about it, when I do 90%, right, and I do it 5 times, so basically this means doing something like this, if you love mathematics, which basically means multiplying 90% 5 times, what we are going to achieve is that the net possibility of having a process that actually is completed properly is of 0.59%, right? And if we were even to increase the thing, okay, let's imagine that the LLM does not do it at 10%, but does only 1% of mistakes, right? So we are happy like 99% of the time. If you were to do, and actually let me go here because otherwise you don't see. So if you do 99% of the time and you multiply it 5 times, then you have that your business process has a 0.95% of being successful. 0.95 or 95% of being successful. But what does it mean for a business? So let's imagine that you send the proposal with wrong data or to a different customer 5 times out of 100. This does not really translate in a 5% loss of your revenue, right? This can translate easily in a 100% loss of your revenue, right? Because you're sharing sensible information, because you're sharing personal data and so on and so forth. So in order to control this variability, what you want to use is frameworks that will help you proceed in a structured way and will help your LLM to proceed in a structured way. And which framework are we going to talk about in this course? Well, first and foremost, mine, which is the RBI. So basically, this is a framework that I came up with just because it's easy to remember. And by the way, because we don't have a framework that right now we have a 100% certainty that we should refer to, and that is the best framework, right? So every framework that I am also gonna walk you through quickly right now shares the core logic, which is the separation of concerns. I'm gonna explain it in detail later on. But basically, this is a framework where you have rules, where you have a brain, and where you have an implementation layer, right? So what we're doing is we are separating the layer that decides what should happen, which is the rules, right? The brain decides the order in which these things should happen. And then I is basically the execution layer. So basically here we only take action, right? Now, there are a couple of others that are interesting. So one is called the React framework. And basically, these are all frameworks that are now well established, and there is actually a lot of research also on top of these. So basically, this starts with a thinking layer, then an act layer, right? So before it thinks, so it reasons on the step, then it decides which tools to call and take. Then it observes, right? And then it repeats. So that's the one of the framework that we currently have available. Another framework which is very close to mine actually is just a 2-layer framework called Plan and Execute, so PR. So you have simply 2 layers that will divide your agent. So one just plans, one executes. And then you have also other framework. You have a variety, but another very interesting one is what Crew AI is doing, and a bit on what AutoGen from Microsoft is also basing their stuff on, which is the multi-agent framework. That basically it's an orchestration framework where there is basically it mimics the structure of a company. So you start with having a CEO AI agent. So on top of here, then here you have a marketer, then I don't know, an operation manager. And then this operation manager happened to have also an intern right here, right? So I don't necessarily like this type of framework, even though they are doing a very good job, by the way. And the reason is because I think it mimics quite too much an actual organization run by humans. And I think that eventually we need to adapt, or companies will adapt and adjust to an organization that's heavily based on AI agents. So I think that a framework like this one, which is the separation of concerns, and or like this one will be the framework that will be prominent. Of course, mine has no research, right? So I'm not claiming that it's the perfect one, but what I'm claiming is that until we have one that gives us 100% of accuracy, what matters, regardless of the brand, is that your framework is working, right? And it's effective. And by the way, I think also that a type of framework like this, where you separate what to do, when should be done, and what's the decision-making process and the action that you have to do, is a bit more efficient also than a framework like this, because here, if you are planning and then just executing, you are kind of having two layers in one, right? So your P is also the decision maker layer, which I don't personally prefer. And just to be super clear, what is the core logic in all of these frameworks, regardless of how each and every one is being branded, like mine, like someone else's, and etc. The core logic is the separation of concern. And this is what I want you to take away from this. This concept was invented in 1974, more or less, and it became the core foundation of software engineering, which basically means, in simple terms, and as a third thing, the other things that improved massively is the cost. Now, again, let's compare apple to apple. So let's compare like the evolution of Claude, just to see how far we have gone. So if you look in the red highlighted stuff, the cost of input tokens per million tokens during the input, right, went down from 15, and I'm looking at this thing right here, from 15 to 5, right? And also on the output side, the cost went down from 75 actually to 25. So what does it mean? That it means that overall we have a 3x improvement of the models, right? And actually, what I am expecting is that the more we move forward, the more this cost will drop, because I think over this past year, the cost went down of something close to between 35 and 45%. So I am expecting this to keep compounding over time, and this technology to become more and more affordable the more we go on. So what actually this means for us? This means for us that this technology is already here, by the way, and it will continue to be adopted more and more and more the more we move forward with time, and the more businesses get an understanding of what this technology can do, what it can't do, what they can expect, and so on and so forth. And so what I would be, if I were you, is an early adopter of this technology, because realistically, the choice that we have in front of us is either we learn this stuff very fast, or either we most likely are going to be replaced if we can't or build or interact with this technology, right? And why is that? The reason why we want to be early adopters, whether you may be a business owner, whether you may be a freelancer or someone willing to start and sell AI automation services, is that we have a billion-dollar market that it's clearly open in front of us. As we explained before, we have the arbitrage window that it's still wide open. Eventually, people will catch up. But as of now, there is a billion-dollar opportunity, and we can grab a part of that if we're smart enough. Let's now clarify a bit the confusion that we generally have between like chatbot and agent. And to do that, allow me to do it live, going into Antigravity, and then I will also use ChatGPT in order to see the difference, right? So let me ask Antigravity to do something like this. So to scrape 10 CEOs in the UK in the recruitment industry with 51 to 100 employees. And I will press enter. And now I will access ChatGPT and I will ask something similar. Hey, what would you do in order to scrape 10 CEOs in the recruitment industry in the UK with 51 to 100 employees? And then we're going to just give the prompt and see what it gives us as an output. But already here, you will be able to see one thing. And this is the first, maybe initial distinction that I would like to do. When we talk to chatbots, imagine that you have an employee that is sitting in a chair and doesn't have a laptop or a keyboard in front of him, right? What can this employee do? Realistically, it can simply talk to you, but it can't actually take any action. And this is exactly what ChatGPT, and in this case, a chatbot is, right? So it's something to which we can chat and talk and get information and ask questions, but we can't actually do things with ChatGPT or any other, right? While the agentic workflow, as you can see right here in the background, and that's the reason why I wanted to ask the Antigravity this, it can actually take stuff and it can actually do something, right? In this case, it's going to scrape the leads. It will enrich them because this is a workflow that I created, and then it will upload the sheets. Uploads the profiles in a sheet that I will be able to then review and validate if this output is good enough or not. Now, one other very important thing is that right now, what's happening? Right now, it's happening that most people are using these IDEs or Antigravity, Claude Code, like VS, whatever, right? These IDEs, they are using them as chatbots. And what I want to do with this course is basically teach you how you can shift from actually using it as a input and output thing to an actual tool that you can use in order to take some action and do some tasks, right? And what is the difference? Now, let's imagine that we are just analyzing the chatbot, and so the ChatGPT. Here, what we have is what we call dynamic knowledge, right? So why is it dynamic knowledge? It's because I can talk to the GPT and the GPT can talk back to me. And this interaction can go back and forth up until I'm satisfied with what I want to do, right? Now, if I go with the AI agent, and so in my IDE, I have both the dynamic knowledge, but I have also the possibility of interacting live with the action that this IDE or AI agent is actually taking. So that's why with the agent, we're adding the action part to the whole picture, right? Now, the AI agent actually finished and scraped the 10 CEOs right in front of us. And so right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the Excel file where it saved the leads, and I'm going to show you the end results. And there we go. So here we have the 10 results that we were looking for, and in the Google Sheet Antigravity leads. So here you have everything. So first name, last name, email, and then a lot of other information. Here, you can actually validate that these are from the UK. I will just unhide and unblur the city, state, and country so that you can actually see that this worked. And then eventually, here you have all of the remaining info with enriched information. And also, let me actually show you this. So you're going to have an icebreaker, which will be personalized to the CEO. And all of this was done simply by one simple prompt. So this is actually a very big disruption from the chatbots that we were discussing before. So here we can take action, and just with one simple prompt, if the system is created properly, it can actually give us something valuable in return. And the second thing it's that it can do also action for you. And in case it gets stuck, it can also auto-improve according to the error that it finds. And this is a big disruption with the AI automation that we were used to use before. Because before, if we had a mistake, then we would have needed to go inside NA10 and then fix the automation ourselves. Here, we're simply talking to an IDE in natural language. So to make it a bit simpler, let's just real quick understand what did we just see? Like, how did this AI agent came up with all of these information? So what we saw, and it's represented here on the left-hand side, was that we provided a prompt of some sort, and then the AI agent started thinking, analyzed some stuff, and then it gave us an output, right? So the output that we received right away was, if we stopped and read, that scraping failed because recruitment, which is right here in our prompt, did not give the result that it expected because it's not a valid industry filter. And the error message suggests it's using standard LinkedIn industry names like staffing and recruiting. So what happened, always in the same prompt, as you saw, we didn't stop, like it came straight away, was that the agent readjusted everything and then it proceeded with the rest. So what is it doing under the hood each time that we're interacting with this agent, right? So initially it's planning. So the first step that we always do is this one. And what this means is that it turns the goal that we are giving it into sub-steps. And why is this important? Because it doesn't matter really what like framework you're using or how you are structuring your agent. There are plenty of useful. I used mine and I will show it to you in a second, which is the RBH. It's easy for me to remember. And there is no such a framework that right now gives you 100% of execution like accuracy. And the thing that it's doing is that it's turning into the goal into executable steps. Now, the second thing that it's trying to do is that it's trying to access its memory in order to understand, okay, do I remember any of this? Do I have previous information? Can I actually do something that I was not doing before? And so on and so forth. Then it reflects, right? So reflects with both the information that this agent had and the information that we just provide. So what it does right here is that it evaluates and improves its own work. So just like here, where we said, okay, this is not good because the prompt was not good because the Apify scraper, and if you see right here, had a different type of filter that was compliant with LinkedIn. And then it accesses the tool, which is, as we just mentioned, the Apify scraper. And then the orchestration means that it's actually coordinating each of the steps. So if I were to plot, and I might be able to plot it right here. So first I plan, then I access my memory, then I reflect on the things, and then I use the tools, right? And then let's imagine that this circle goes in this direction. The orchestration layer is actually something that happened inside, right? So it's something that is inside this circle. And the reason is that basically what the orchestration is doing is that it's just making sure that we are moving smoothly between each of these things. Now, are these agents actually perfect? Do they never fail because we have all of these like structure and the framework that I'm going to give you, which is the rule, brain and hands framework that enable us to autocorrect the thing? Well, actually, no. Like they actually can fail. And how can they fail? Well, the main reason why these things fail right now is because of context. And what do I mean by that? I mean by that as you can see, I start prompting the agent with some prompt, right? So here we have stuff that are written and etc. Then what happens? We have some reasoning, which is outside of these context, which just basically means if you're not familiar with it, like the words, the letters that we're writing and everything that we are seeing inside the platform. So all of this is outside. Then the agent will give us some answers back, right? Then if you're not satisfied, we are just going to prompt again the agent with some other stuff. And then most likely we will receive another answer and we proceed like this. So right now, the way that these agents are operating, and I will make it in blue, is that basically whenever the agent is gathering the context and so accessing the conversation, understanding what actually we asked to this agent and what the agent previously answered in order to figure out if it can improve or not, what's actually happening is that the agent is taking the most relevant information out of the previous steps, right? And it's summarizing them. So let's imagine that now we are inside the brain of our agent. If we were to say that the red is these prompt, which are what we say, and let's say the green are these, which is the answer that the agent gave us, what's going to happen is that inside the memory or inside the head of the agent, there will be something like this, where there will be a couple of lines of my first initial prompt, then a couple of lines of my second initial prompt, and it will store just the most relevant information, right? So it will try to summarize everything that we did, and it will try to break it down into more simple steps. However, in order to do this, we just understand that we're not really efficient in the way we're managing it, right? Because let's imagine that we're not able to nail it down in the first, second, or third prompt, which is most likely true, right? If we're building a business-ready type of agentic workflow, then eventually we need to go through some iteration, most realistically, right? And therefore, we can understand that this context, and so these all words and letters and etc. can become very big, very fast. At this point, though, the question is, okay, but why do we need all of this? What are we actually trying to achieve? And if you remember, we already introduced the concept of stochasticity, but what we have as an end in mind is that we want to achieve a standardization, right? Like we want our agent to be able to act in a predictable way and within some sort of guardrails so that we are able to control the output. Because we ran the example, if you remember before, that if we had a 5-layer process and every step would have a 10% of failing, which means a 90% of succeeding, we would have a net 0.59/59% chance of the process being completed properly, right? And if you were to increase this at 99%, then you would have a 95% of possibility. But we mentioned that this would mean that most likely our revenue would drop straight to zero, right? Because we're sending, and this is the example that we made before, we are sending the wrong invoices to the wrong customer. And this is what we're trying to achieve, right? And what we want to avoid. So the statement is that profit comes from predictability and from execution, and this is what actually a business needs. It doesn't need creativity, right? So the question is, okay, but given this, how do we do this? And the answer is that either we wait for the models to become smarter, because realistically models will be smarter, then eventually they commit less mistake, then eventually they understand better, the context becomes bigger, that if you are not familiar with the context, is basically the number of letters, of tokens that a LLM can remember when it's answering you and so on. And the other option is that we change the architecture around them. And we already introduced the concept that we chose option 2. And that's why we are focusing on framework, and we will discussing in this course the RBI framework, because I want you to have a further understanding of what this does before actually showing this to you in practice. So the baseline for the RBI framework is that we are creating 3 different layers. And what does it mean? It means that eventually in your Antigravity later on, you will have a slash folder, right? And then the first one will be /rules, and then eventually you're gonna be /brain, and then you're gonna also have /implementation. So you're gonna have 3 folders like this. Actually, the brain is not gonna be there because we're just leaving the LLM free to operate. So you're gonna have just /rule and /implementations. Why is this useful? Because in the rules part, and we will see later in details all of this, but as for now, just remember that on the rule part, you just have rules or guardrails that are helping the LLM understand where it should operate and what are the boundaries and or constraints, right? So we are not asking to do anything here. Same thing for the brain. Here we just leave the layer as a decision-making layer for the LLM to be able to interpret our things and then to be able to decide what should be done and in which order. And why do we do this? Because basically here we are just exploiting the part where the LLM are the best, which is at decision-making, which is at routing stuff, right? They are not good at executing step-by-step processes, but they are very good at taking decision, brainstorming, and so on. And then the implementation layer is basically where we just execute the work. Okay? So, in detail, what does it mean? It means that in the rules folder, we will have only files, we will have documents, and we will have companies' SOPs. And by the way, I will also teach you later, in case you don't have an SOP or your company SOP are not good enough, how you can tackle the problem and solve this. In the brain layer, which we will not see, but basically we will tell with an initial prompt to the overall system that it should use the model to reason, right? And then the implementation layer, we will only have scripts and codes snippets. So mind you, I tend to do most of the stuff in Python, so now it's .py. However, you also have the possibility of having JavaScript and all of the fancy stuff that you prefer if you are a software developer. Just remember that all of this will be created autonomously from the LLM, and you don't necessarily need to know how to code. Your only end in mind will be that you need to understand how things are working and what you want to achieve. So your business understanding will become much more relevant than your coding skills at this point in time, right? So why does this work? This works once again, but now we will look at it in a different angle because we are separating three things. So what to do is going to be explained into code. What does it mean? It means that when I tell you what to do, and I don't know, you have step one, and I don't know, you need to call the APIs, which is basically a secret key that enables you to be authenticated to a third-party service. So let's imagine you want to access your ClickUp, then you're going to have your API keys, right? So you want to access these API, and you're going to do it in a very specific way. Then eventually you want to look at your CRM and decide, okay, if a lead come in, then this should be the filter that I want. I don't know, status, meeting pending. And I don't know, when the meeting is booked, then eventually you need to go to step 3, right? So all of these things will not be written anymore in natural language. So all of these deterministic operations, but will be written in code. And why is this useful? Because the code, and you can see it right here, is more reliable, is faster, and it helps us mitigating the stochasticity, which is the all end in mind that we're having with all of these things, right? Then, not only we are separating what to do and everything becomes code, as we just noticed, so everything also will be decided from an LLM that is free to handle now edge cases, the operation, the order, and something that we will introduce later on is that eventually, inside the initial system prompt, you also want to enable the LLM to have a certain degree of flexibility because you can, and later we will go into details, but you can imagine these AI agent-like employees, right? Let's imagine that you have an employee A that is an employee, I don't know, a low performer that you need every time you're to help him out, you need to give constant input and etc. Then with this type of employee, if you're a business owner, and by the way, you will do this mistake when you start hiring someone, but eventually, if an employee always needs your feedback in order to do anything, then eventually you become the bottleneck of productivity, right? Because you become the stopper for processes. While if you have an employee B that has a lot of autonomy and it's a super top performer, a star, and etc., and this employee basically is able to solve everything with as little guidance as possible, or even start solving themselves before even coming to you, and then just comes to you when this employee is really stuck, then actually this is the best employee. And you can think about AI agent with this type of approach, because if you let them have enough flexibility, then eventually you will be rewarded with the job and the improvement that these AI agent slowly are going to do on themselves. And later we will talk about also self-annealing or self-healing process of AI agents. Great. So now we're going to start building the first workflow, which is an onboarding email to our client whenever they come in. But before doing that, let me quickly walk you through Antigravity, explain you what platform we are using and what an IDE actually is. This is the platform, or Antigravity, and it's a platform that is owned, I would say, by Google. Right? And this is what we call an IDE. IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. And just to be clear, I want to make sure that we discuss it right now. Agentic Workflow and IDE are not the same thing. Agentic Workflow is the things that we are going to be producing with an IDE. IDE is the interface that allows us to interact and talk with the agent, right? So with this in mind, now we can go deeper into the platform. Every time that you will enter Antigravity, the first thing that you are going to be doing is actually open a folder or instantiate or initialize, whatever you want to use as a term, a workspace, okay? So our workspace is basically the folder. So here we're going to go here and write something along the way of full tutorial, and then we're going to create it. Now, once you open this, you will see that on the left-hand corner, so right here, you're going to have your workspace initiate. Actually, still not initiated, but it's created, right? So we see that our workspace / folder now has the same name of the folder that we created, and also we can see it from here. Perfect. Now, before we even go into any sort of detail, I want us to see immediately that here we have basically the screen, which is divided into 3 parts. And each part, we're gonna touch it in detail right now, but follows a very, and has a very different function for the type of things that you have to do with your agent. Now, to truly understand what these 3 parts do, let me immediately import my file so that we can initiate the workspace, and then we're gonna discuss while we see it live what happens and where we see what actually, okay? So let me start immediately by importing the file, and done. So this is the prompt that I'm gonna be using for my framework. But before even going there, let me just run a prompt so that we can start discussing. Hey, please help me initiate the workspace according to the agent.md file. And after you've done that, please create sort of a mock-up files with a little bit of rules and a couple of implementation scripts, so that I can explain how this is being populated and how it works. Okay, so what do we see immediately? We see immediately that on the right-hand corner right here, I have the chance of discussing and talking with my AI agent, right? So this is called the agent chat interface. And this is basically where you will be living when you're using the agentic workflow. So let's imagine that we actually have built everything. Your only access and the only thing that you will need to use right here is this chat right here. That's it. You don't need to touch anything else with the hypothesis that your workflow is already functioning. This chat right here, and let me quickly zoom in so you can actually see better what happens and what these voice mean. But you can see that in this chat right here, I can type anything, right? So here I can give any sort of instruction that I want to the agent. However, here I have a plus button. And the plus button, now I will explain it to you what workflows mean and etc. But just see it as a place where you can actually add some context to the agent. So in here, you can add like pictures to reference stuff, right? You can add mentions. And you can also add specifically workflows that I will show you also how we can add them. But just for you to see, this is a repository that I have taken from GitHub that I use when I need to debug the code. And now if I were to press it, basically what it would happen is that I have my repository here, I have all of the instruction, and the agent has something structured that it can follow in order to proceed with all of the remaining stuff. In here, I also have a planning thing with a little arrow right here. And this is basically the conversation mode that I can have with my agent. And what does this mean? It means that we have 2 ways of interacting or that the agent can answer us. The first is a planning mode, and planning mode basically means that before answering, the agent will think about the steps, will break them down into actionable steps and sub-goals that it wants to achieve. Because, you know, if you have a complex goal, then the agent will break it down into more actionable and achievable steps so that it can slowly and bit by bit reach the goal that you want. And then eventually you have the fast option, which is basically telling the agent, okay, don't think that much because maybe the task is not so relevant or it's not so difficult. So just do that, okay? Now, with the thinking process, it's very interesting because if I now zoom out a little bit, we will be able to see what the thinking process actually does. And we will see that here, as discussed, you will have a task, right? Window, where you actually have seen what the agent actually did. So here, actually, it broke down the things into tasks, subtasks, and then another one, and then another one, and etc. And you also can see that once these tasks were achieved, there is also a little tick that will tell us, okay, this task has been achieved and everything works as per expectation, right? Or ideally, it works as such. Now, going back to our model back here, we see, and to our chat, we see that with this little arrow right here, we have that if we press, we can access different models. And this is very interesting because in Antigravity, you have the option of interacting not only with the Google ecosystem, so with Gemini 3 Pro, High, Low, Flash, and etc., but you also have the possibility of using Claude 0.5 Sonnet or Opus, or even ChatGPT, okay? Now, when do you need to use which model and why? I would recommend to use Gemini 3 Pro whenever you are instantiating anything or whenever you have to build anything from scratch. It's much smarter, and it's, of course, the whole IDE is made more efficient for its own native like models, right? I would recommend to go with Claude Sonnet 4.5 just when you are actually debugging something, because the model is extremely good at code. And so that is the use case that I would suggest to go there. While for GPT, I generally don't use it. I'm going to be very honest. I think it's a pretty, with all the respect, not useful model as of now. And so I tend not to use it, right? Great. Now, before moving forward with anything else and going to discuss what these things are, let's look at this. Now, we can move, we now discussed the things. Number one, we mentioned that it's the chat interface, right? Now, what do we have here? Here we have one thing which is called File Explorer. And what do we have right here? We have that, if you can see, here you have a .py script, then you have a .md script. So you have a lot of different things inside folders. And you can see this basically as your storage or your initial folder, because this is actually the workspace that we created is actually a folder, right? Where you will be able to store all the document. And now, as we discussed before, and this is a simple example, but on the rules folder, we will just have, we said, rules, and therefore things that are written in natural language. And therefore, if now I can go here in the central panel, so right here, I'm going to be able to see what this is about, right? So this is what's called the editor panel. And this is actually where you can see what is inside the script. So if I press here, I will go into the markdown file. If I write the .py file, if I press on the .py file, I'm gonna be able to go inside here. And as you saw, nothing actually of this line of code was written by me. And this is a very important thing, because now you will understand that the technical barrier to actually become proficient at building a agentic workflow tends to go lower and lower. So if I wanted to create some other things, I would simply go in here and do something of the sort of, hey, please create some other rules and some other implementation script. Let's imagine that you are, I don't know, scraping leads, then you're adding them into a CRM, then you are enriching them with data, with databases and or things that you find online. Like, imagine that you are completing a rather difficult process. Please create some mockup for .md files and .py files. Ideally, we have, I don't know, 5, 6 .py and a couple of MDs in the rules folder, so that I can clearly show that in the rule folder, I have only natural language, and on the PY, I have scripts that are going to behave in a different way according to the action that they are actually going to perform. And now, as you can see, the agent started producing whatever I asked. And we will see later, when we actually produce something which is useful for any business, right, that the only thing that we will have to do is basically just go here in this chat interface and ask the agent exactly what we want. Now, my prompt was very basic, was very general, and it's literally just to let you see what the agent can do. And one thing that I care about is that if you actually wanted right here, you would have the possibility of checking also the thought process of the agent, right? So in here, you're going to be able to check, okay, what did it do? Why did it do what it did? And so on and so forth, right? So here also on the previous steps, you have the possibility, what did it updated? Why did it edit all of this? Why did it do these changes or those changes? And now you can see that as I asked, it started creating the .md file that I can go inside and check. And now eventually it also created these .py files, which is basically the code files that we want. Once again, only the separation of concerns. Here we just say what needs to happen, and so the overall guardrails and rules. Here we're gonna say how the work needs to be done in a non-ambiguous way, right? Because then here everything is defined by code. And then eventually, as we mentioned before, we don't have the brain layer, because the brain is exactly the model that we chose here on the bottom right-hand corner, where we are actually deciding with which LLM we're going to take the action, and according to the rule of thumb that I gave you. Now, we do see that there are another couple of other folders right here that we never discussed and never mentioned. But all of these things, by the way, are inside my .md file, right? So, and what are these? These are, first of all, the temporary file. And you can see this as sort of a trash can, like where whenever you are using your workflow and you're producing things like, I don't know, the 10 leads scraped in the UK, which is an example that we're gonna do later, or you're gonna, I don't know, download a file, get a PDF, and etc. All of these things are going to be produced in this .tmp file that eventually, when the workflow stops, it's just gonna be deleted because those are things that are non-value added for replicating this sort of workflow in any other environment, right? And the .env file is basically a convention that there is in the programming, I want to say, world, which basically it's used in the following way. When you have API keys, when you have things that you use to authenticate yourself with third-party apps or that are connected in a unique way to you as an identity or to your bank account and etc., you don't want to export them and send this file to other people, because otherwise they would be able to use your account and therefore your tokens and therefore your money in order to run these workflows. And what you want to do is you want to have them stored in this .env file, which is basically a place inside your machine where all of these secret things will be stored. And whenever you export, just as an FYI, you are going to export the rules if you wanted and the implementation layer. The rules is non-necessary, to be honest, because this just serves to give more context. But the implementation layer is good because those are actually the scripts that you run, and those are exactly what the new workflow should be doing. And why is this useful? Because if now I produce this and I really wanted to share it with, I don't know, a friend, a client, or implement it or send it to my, I don't know, ops team and etc., the simple thing that I would do is that I would give this file to them, tell them what we did in the beginning, so initiate the workspace according to this file, and then eventually I would just export probably the implementation layer. Rules if I wanted context, but once again, that is that. Cool. Now that we discussed this, let's go a little bit more inside the platform and let's start seeing, before actually building something, what are all of the buttons that we see. So you're not going to be able to see it, but in here on the top right-hand corner, you're going to have something called Open Manager, and then you're going to have, I don't know, buttons that are going to be to have this shape and they are of this form and etc. So what do these do? So if I press the first one, I'm just hiding and showing the left-hand side, so the Explorer. Here it's the toggle panel, and this is basically opening the terminal. So this is the second button that has a shape like this, and it's like literally colored here. And what this is going to do is basically it's giving you access to the terminal, because specifically when you are downloading things, then you want to run sometimes the code right here. There is also the possibility that you're going to ask your AI agent, okay, run it for me. But if you wanted to run it manually, this is your terminal. Now, the right-hand side, it has the same function, right? It shows this toggle agent / AI agent chat window. Of course, settings. Settings is something that you might want to look into. However, the best way to do it is actually to go in here, which is antigravity.google, and get started. And why is that? Because actually this is the official document that Google produced, right? Where everything about anti-gravity is explained. I'm going to walk you through a couple of other stuff now myself. However, if you really wanted to go into the nitty-gritty details, this is actually the best resource that you can actually have, because it's made by Google themselves. And it will explain you everything from models, from rules, workflows, agent settings, and then eventually to the skills, that it's something that you actually want to, introduce in your folders and in your workspace. And then you will be able to gather all of the information that you actually need. Going back in here, another things that I wanted to show you is, let's press now at the very top, the Open Agent Manager. And this is a very interesting interface, right? Because in here, you are going to see that I don't only have one workspace, but I have quite few right now. And this is just on this account, right? And this is basically every single project that I'm doing. And if you open them up, you will see that every single one of these have at least one like chat. And basically this is one AI agent. So let me now introduce you a little thing, which is you can work on multiple projects and with multiple AI agent at the same time from this window. And what this is called is what the fancy term of parallelization means. That basically it means that you can run a lot of agents at the same time in one shot. And how does this work? So in here, you're going to see that you have the possibility of choosing your workspaces. So if I wanted to go to the one that I am currently working on, it's full tutorial. And the only thing that I would have to do is write something along the way of, hey, please look for the best practices to, I don't know, create a website. And then I would simply go here, press the plus button, and to create a, I don't know, amazing, a converting or eye-catching logo, right? I don't know, maybe we're running a project about design and websites and etc. And so you will see that these two agents are actually going to run. And then how do I know if these require my input, if these are finished, or how can I track all of these agents working all together? Where there is this beautiful thing right here, which is called the inbox, where basically it's your one-stop shop where if you go inside, you will see what is running, what is idle, and also here you will have, in case it needs, your approval or a few other things, right? So this is your one-stop shop to control everything and to run everything in parallel. And whenever you hear parallelization, don't think that it's something super complex. Now with agents is simply we are running two chats at the same time. And as you can see here now, I will have that this one finished, so I could eventually go and open and see what it created for me, if I'm satisfied, if I'm not. If I'm not satisfied, the things that I would do is simply go here, and as you can see, it's literally the same document. And if by any chance I'm not around once this is done, then what's going to happen is that I'm going to receive a bip or /a sound, and then eventually it's going to appear in my inbox. Right now I had it open, so what I can do is go here, and as you can see, now it turned into 11, and 2 seconds ago it was 12. Cool. So this is the agent manager. And in here, I think you can press on the very top, Open Editor, and it will bring you back to this interface. Now, before going to the left-hand side, you have other two buttons that we didn't check yet, right? So you have this clock and you have these 3 dots. Now, the clock is used for the initial conversation. So you know that currently I am in this one. And then if I wanted to go on previous conversation, I would simply go here, press, and it would pop up for me. So it's simply an easy way to have access to the same interface that we were looking at before, but in a very, let's call it faster and smarter way. While if you press the 3 dots, here something very interesting happens. And let's start with customizations. So customization is what and by the way, everything in detail will be covered in here. So if you go inside your document and you go inside rules and workflows, this is actually what these whole things are about. So I'm just going to give you a quick summary. But then if you really wanted to go into the details, you can actually go here and read this. So rules here are rules that help guide the behavior of the agent. And you can define them both globally or locally, right? Which basically means in the workspace, which basically means in the folder, which basically means in your project, right? Where you're currently working. And the only thing that you have to do is just press your plus button. And as you can clearly see, this is nothing more than a markdown file, right? Because now if we go here and we press it and we start typing and etc., we start seeing that this is exactly the same markdown file that we actually have when we are creating our agents.md file. So we see that it's just instruction. And what type of instruction do these rules give? Imagine you're creating a website. This is basically how the agents should behave in terms of styles, in terms of fonts. Like, it's basically a guideline that will tell him, okay, I like things done in this way, so please do them in this way, right? While on the other side, if I were to press into workflows, workflows are a series of prompts that explain step by step what the agent should be doing in specific situations. Again, globally or locally. And how is this used? Let's imagine that something is not working with your code. I could simply call this workflow right here. And this workflow right here, if I double press and I show it to you, is again a series of instructions, but in this case, it's going to tell the agent how it should be debugging something, right? So now we're not talking about guidelines for style-related things. Here we're talking about process-related stuff, right? So this is the big difference. And how can you refer to them? If you press to back agent and you press the slash, then you can actually refer to this with simply by pressing, they will appear automatically. And also, as mentioned before, you also have the possibility of doing mentions, which basically nothing means that you are referring to some files or different directories or servers and etc., right? So it's just a way to cross-reference stuff. Now, in here, the second option was MCP servers. And we mentioned already that your MCP is simply the English of apps and AI. And here we need to do a small difference, right? So because the MCP is, you have the MCP servers and the MCP clients. So MCP servers is basically the platform that we're using. So imagine the MCP of NA10, in this case of Antigravity and etc. So imagine it like a door, right? This is my door. And the other third party will have another door. And this is the client MCP. So one MCP asks information, the other MCP gives information. And that's why we refer to servers and clients. So the first servers is asking, the client is giving, okay? So in this case, this is all our client MCP, which is nothing more than a way that we have to connect with these platforms. So if I wanted to go, I don't know, and connect to Dart, I could simply go here and press install, and then I would be able to use the connection simply by going in the agent chat and saying, hey, I need to do X, Y, and Z with Dart and etc. Same thing with Firebase, same thing with Stripe. I believe there is the native integration. Yes, and I installed it even, and etc. So here it's just a place where you actually can go and connect with the remaining apps. Now, if you press on Manage MCPs, here you also have the possibility of connecting with other MCP. So for example, with the NA10 MCP. And how are you going to do that? You go here and you press raw config, and then you can go inside your NA10 app and you can actually take the MCP thing and then paste it right here. Let me show you real quick how it works. So if I press the MCP now, I will blur everything because I can't really show you what's inside, because otherwise this would expose my access, right, to my keys and stuff like this. But what I would do right now is basically go inside my NA10. And then once I'm inside here, let me move just to make sure that you're actually seeing. I would go into the settings, MCP access. I would then go into access token, and then let me go back right here. And then what I would do is I would press this thing right here, which is mcp.json file. And then what it would happen is that this would appear. I would simply press copy, go back inside my Antigravity, and then I would paste it in here. And if I paste it here, you will see that I will have a dot right here. That means that the file is not saved. So all I have to do right now is go on file and press save, right? So it will be right here. And then once it's saved, I would have the X, so nothing more to do. And once I would go here and I would refresh, if I did everything correctly, I would still see my NA10 MCP appearing. And this is how you can connect any MCP to your Antigravity. And now the interesting thing is that all you have to do in order to be able to access your NA10 is simply to talk to Antigravity. Now, one thing that is important to say is that with Antigravity, you can't actually create NA10 workflow inside NA10, but what you can do is you can search workflow, you can execute the workflows, and you also can get the workflow details, right? So what does it mean? It means that in here, if I zoom out and think about it, I can turn any app that I already created into NA10 in something working with Antigravity. So I can't modify it, but I can use it. So let's imagine that you have your voice agent create in NA10, And then with Antigravity, you can actually call it because you have a webhook, right? So everything can happen within the Antigravity platform, and here you will be able to access everything. What do you have here on the left-hand side that we still didn't touch, right? So here we said that you have the file explorer, but you can, and you can see it, right? Here, if you hover, it will appear. But if you start going below, you can actually go on search. And let me show you. So let's imagine that I want to search something which is called mechanism. What this will do is it will actually, if you can see, directly find stuff inside the code that were mentioned, right? So we can start searching the code even for keywords and replacing stuff. So this is a function that is extremely powerful because let's imagine that something, I don't know, is broken and it's broken on your API key for, I don't know, ClickUp. Given the fact that they may not be here because they are in the .env file, but you don't remember or you don't know. Then here you would simply be able to go press, I don't know, API key, and it would spit that as an output, right? Now, source control, this is fantastic when you are connecting things to GitHub and the Git repositories. And basically, why would you do that? Because whenever you have something that you want to make public, or also that you want to store previous version of that things, because maybe you are working on the file and you want to make sure that you are saving the latest working version of your agentic workflow, GitHub is a fantastic place where it's pretty commonly used for software developers, where you can simply publish the code each time, and it's basically you can see it as a common storage, right? The reality is that in GitHub, you will find a lot of very interesting stuff. It's a phenomenal place. You will find common project, or it's also a place where you can share your project with someone else and working together with them and so on, right? And all you need to do is like press the publish to GitHub or connecting, which we'll talk about in a second, to the GitHub MCP. Now, run and debug. This is not something that I generally use because I tend to use the interface that I talked about before. And because it's just simpler, instead of me running and debugging stuff, it's simply easier to just ask the agent to debug the stuff itself, right? And this is also part of what we wrote inside the agent file that I still did not show inside for a specific reason. Now here, Remote Explorer, nothing to be mentioned there. While it's very interesting to go in here, which is the extension library. So basically, this is a phenomenal place that it would take me most likely forever to walk you through this. But this is basically the external things that you can install and connect with your IDE, right? So here we see debugger, we see so many things. If now I press A and I look inside the marketplace for anything that starts with A, I would probably stay here forever. And as you can see, I can continue scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And that's why I was mentioning that this part is extremely interesting because you can literally install anything that you want or that you're looking for. And this is basically the log file history and stuff that we were discussing before, right? All right, so the last thing before we actually go building the workflow is let's go through the framework so that you can grasp all of the knowledge and put all of the pieces that we discussed so far together. And you can actually start understanding how truly agentic workflow work under the hood so that whenever we start building, you're going to be able to understand everything and also improve it yourself while following the course. So the first thing that I want to say is that whenever you give the agent or you have the initial prompt is always a very good thing to describe the framework that you're using and also give it a little bit of context on why this framework even exists in the first place. So RBI is built on a simple idea, which is the separation of concerns, right? As explained, you go through the decision-making process, instructions, and execution should not live in the same place. Now, why? Because LLM are probabilistic, business systems are deterministic. When you mix the two, reliability drops, and RBI exists just to prevent that. You can call this Pinot, you can call this pizza, you can call this coffee, it doesn't matter. What matters, and it doesn't matter also on whatever we are branding the framework, what matters is, and I will continue to stress it, is this part right here, right? Which is the same thing that every other framework is based on, and they just have some little tweaks, but nothing crazy. Now, architecture, rules, as mentioned, this is what must happen. okay? So our SOPs written in Markdown, or one file per repeatable workflow. Then we need to contain the goal, the inputs, the script to invoke, the expected outputs, the edge cases, so everything, right? Now, the brain. The brain is when and why things happen. So here we say you are the brain, so in this case, the model, and your role is to orchestrate and decision making. Again, we don't want to execute anything right here, right? Responsibility. Read rules, go to this implementation, sequence multi-step workflows, validate outputs, handle errors, persist state, whatever. Here again, which is important, we do not scrape, we do not execute, we do not do anything. We just shoot downstream, right? So you can imagine it for now as if we had a company policy with a lot of stuff written. This company policy goes to a manager, and the manager is actually our brain, and the manager doesn't take action yet, but it shoots down to the little employee, right? And then the little employee will actually execute the work. And this is what we're actually doing, right? So right now, the only thing that we did is we gave the SOP, we send it to the manager, which is the brain. And now what's going to happen is that the brain will start directing the work and redistributing, let's call it, the workload to the right employee, which in our case, it's the right Python script, okay? So we go back here and then we go to the implementation. So how the work is actually done. And here, everything that's needed. Now, here we say also once again, and we stress on why the RBI works, right? So rules, brain, and implementation is deterministic execution. And then we're gonna just reinstate. Now, we will start before touching this, that I don't want to touch it yet, we're gonna start building the first workflow. We're gonna see what self-repair means in action, and then we're going to understand really what happens under the hood. But as of now we're ready, and we will start with the first workflow. But what I want to say is that your investment of spending all of these hours up until now was a very smart decision, because now you have everything you need in order to understand what really happens. And now that we will start building, you will understand that if you didn't take the time to go through all of the theory and all of the stuff that we discussed, what we're about to do will make little to no sense. With that being said, back to Antigravity, clean Canva, and let's start. All right, workflow number 1. I'm pretty excited. I hope you are as excited as I am. So we know that the first thing that we have to do is we're going to create our workspace. I have already created it so that you guys can find everything in here later on, and it will be onboarding email. So now we know that the first thing that we're going to have to do is import our agents.md file inside the workspace. And the reason is because we want to instantiate this workspace or initialize it with our framework, right? So allow me to do this real quick. And here we are. By the way, first link in the description down below, you will find it for free available. So no email needed, no nothing. It's my folder, so go ahead. And now we're going to do the first thing, which is, as usual, hey, please initialize the workspace with the file agents.md. Perfect. So it seems like everything was initialized as per expectation. Our folders are now empty. And the only thing that you will find, because I love it, is that I have by default inserted an alert user.py. Just make sure that it works in your laptop too. And it's basically a sound that my laptop does whenever the workflow finishes, because I don't want to sit in front of my laptop waiting for the workflow to finish. Therefore, I have this, and whenever it finishes, baling, and then it's just amazing, a little thing. Cool. So it seems like it worked. So what do we want to do actually? So we said that we want to build something that is business useful and that will help you selling AI services and or you implement AI agentic workflow in your business. So the first thing that we want to do is, let's imagine that a client decided to work with us. The first thing that we want to send them is the material, right? That they will have available in order to start initializing their agentic workflow before we maybe start working inside them or whatever, right? So the initial email that I want to send, I want something that works in the way that I ask the AI agent, okay, please welcome, Pino at gmail.com. And I want Pino to receive a quick intro email. And also I want Pino to receive a link of a folder right? Which will be exactly, by the way, the folder that I will share with you. So we're simply going to share this folder straight away, correct? So that, they can come in, they can download their material, and then they can initialize their workspace. And then eventually we will start working on them later on. So what do we do? Hey, so I would like this workflow to be an onboarding workflow for a client that decided to start working with us. What I would need to achieve is basically I would need to send them an email where I would basically welcome them to my company. What I need you to build is basically this workflow that works in the following way. You need to connect my Gmail account, right? And then I need you to take as an input the name of the customer and then the email of the customer. And I need you to send them, the customer, a templated email. So first of all, please build the workflow. Then once everything is working properly, please let me know and I will give you the template and the email that I would like to send. So the steps are, before, let's ensure that everything works as per expectation. And in a second moment, I will give you the template that I want to use. Perfect. So now the only thing that we have to do is now wait. And what's going to happen, just to set some initial expectation, is that this will start with something that has nothing inside, right? We don't have authentication, we don't have anything, and etc. And for the majority of this course, we will build everything from scratch each time. However, this is not the most efficient way, because what I could do is, which is a concept that I want to introduce right now, is that the AI agent works best when they are under the same hat, right? So let's imagine that, and here it's just asking me to proceed, right? So I have the implementation, and then we're ready, and I will just press proceed. Anyway, so actually, let me do the example of the umbrella that maybe is also a bit more clear. So under your same umbrella, which is an Italian saying, I don't know if it's also English or whatever that is, right? You can have more than one person. And at the same time, under the same umbrella, you can have more than one AI agent, right? So the most efficient way, and what I would suggest that you do while we build a workflow together, is that instead of starting from scratch, and I will keep on starting from scratch because I want you to get used to importing the file and doing the same thing, but it will be simply creating a folder that's called, full YouTube tutorial. And then each time, basically, you are simply, instead of reinstantiating the workspace and everything, you're simply gonna go right here and you're gonna tell the AI agent, okay, let's now build another workflow that does X, Y, and Z. So basically, the most efficient way is to have everything inside the same umbrella, right? So that the agent doesn't, do one thing and then you need to call the other agent and then manually you need to call the other one and etc. But with one agent, you can streamline all the calls at once. So let's imagine that now we want to send an onboarding email and then insert the lead in the CRM and then potentially do some other stuff to our, sales team to schedule, the first follow-up, or send to the tech team, some requirements. This could be our onboarding flow. And the best use case is that for, let's call it the onboarding client, this is the first umbrella, we have one thing that does everything automatically. Then let's imagine that we want to have another work stream for, clients that are interested that still did not pay us, right? But we're trying to onboard them, or we're trying to sell them the services and etc. The second umbrella could be something along the way of, okay, insert these leads inside my CRM as, pending. And then in case they answered, if I move in the CRM, send the proposal to the email and so on and so forth. And all of this, again, can be done automatically if we just continue building inside the same workspace. So my reco is, now we will do everything from scratch each time. But what I would recommend is take these stuff and put them inside their own big umbrella folder, because this is how they work best. So ideally, your end is to have all the rules, one for each, right? So you'll have onboarding email, then, sending proposal and etc. And then you will have all your .py, so your Python scripts. Cool. Now, I set up the scripts, but I need the credential .json file to proceed with the Gmail API integration. please place in the root directory. So inside basically my thing, the credentials, which is basically asking me. So if you see it's onboarding email.credential.json, it's basically asking me right here, create something that is called credential.json, right? And ensure that it contains everything related to your Gmail account. Now, this needs to be done inside the Google console. So it's something that it's step by step, and the agent will tell you also what are the steps that you should be doing. And the incredible part is that in here, you are going to also be able to have links and URL that you can simply press, and it will bring you directly to the right place. Okay? So let me just now create the JSON file. Fantastic. So now I have created my JSON file, and I am going to say JSON file created, please proceed. And now we will see that the agent will start looking into this and understanding that we actually created the file, and then it confirmed that this is fine, and it will then proceed with the OAuth authentication for Google, for Gmail, and then we will try the email. One thing that I just want to say right now is that I find pretty interesting also when we look inside how the agent is thinking, because most of the times understanding also how these stuff are working and what's the reasoning process behind every single choice that they take, how are they diagnosing things, how they are solving them, and etc. It's very, very good. Now, one thing that you will see, and that we didn't introduce on purpose, is that the agent will be able to find errors alone. And if you remember, when we were looking inside the agent.md, and I will show it to you real quick, I told you that there is a part that we will introduce later on, which is the self-repair when things break. So right now we introduce this concept where the agent are actually able to identify mistakes and fix them themselves, unless they need your input, which is one of this situation right here. And so what it told me is that you should go inside here, and basically what I did was taking the OAuth of a wrong email. So I thought that my account of Antigravity was connected to, I don't know, g@gmail.com, while it was at p@gmail.com. So basically, I just created it in the wrong place, right? So now we're going to fix that and then come back. So now what I do is I press here, Google Cloud Console, and then create credentials, OAuth client ID. So here, then create credentials, OAuth client ID, application type. It was written desktop app, right? And then download the JSON file in the folder. So basically, this is going to be called onboarding email, create, and then I am going to download the JSON inside the folder. Now I need to blurry this, and the remaining part is done. So that's that. I'm going to open. This is the JSON that I got. Please insert it yourself properly inside the credentials. I forgot I had the mic over there. .json. All right. So I hope you heard, by the way. Verifying my app. Continue. Authentication flow complete. Refresh credential. A browser should open for you to log in. Please authenticate to allow. That has been done. Perfect. So it seems like now it's succeeded. Let me check real quick if this is true. Hey, please use this template. Subject, welcome on board. And then maybe we can add here name. Next steps. Hey, name, thanks a lot for deciding to work with us. We are excited to get you started. As a first step, before kickoff call, please find the agents.md file attached folder. And I give the folder of mine. When you have a moment, initialize the workspace on your side if anything is unclear, or you'd prefer to go through it together, we can set it up, a live call, and etc. Best Giovanni. So now we are giving the template to Antigravity, and later on we could actually let me do another thing actually, and send the email to Giovanni at jobegiato@gmail.com, which is my dummy email, right? And this is something that I can send real quick right now. And then let's see if everything works properly. I should actually see in my email something that pops up, and then we can review the formatting and we can fix it, right? So my idea is now to have something properly working for you. So let's see how that goes. All right, so this is the email that we just received. So hi, Giovanni. Thanks a lot for deciding to work with us. The folder, does this folder actually work? Yes, perfect. And it's the agent.md file, which is exactly what you will see. Fantastic. So it's even shared here with the attachment, nothing else. I think this is now great because if now I wanted to run a second trial, just to make sure that everything works as per expectation, hey, send it now. Hey, now onboard Pietro at gmail.com. And as you can see, guys, and this is very important, we are living and interacting only with this interface right here. So when you use Agentic Workflow, you will basically only stay inside here. You will not move around in here. Now, when we're building them, it's a little bit different because as you can see, we can check the credentials, we can check whatever it's being produced, and the agent is thinking, and so on and so forth. However, when we're using them, it's simply right here. Now, it seems like it succeeded. Hi, Pietro. Perfect. So it's working. It's customized. Welcome on board, Pietro. Next steps, and etc. Now, if you just wanted to change this and make it better or make it more customized, you can literally simply go download the thing, do whatever I did. So you will have the agents.md file. You will have rules and implementation with your beep also included. And then eventually, you simply need to say, hey, please change the email in this and include this. That's that. You have your onboarding email ready, and we can move to the second workflow. All right, so actually, before we proceed with the second workflow, let's go back once more to the theoretical concept, just because we want to ensure that we have this concept clear. And now is this part, right? So what did it happen? Like, what did we see actually in practice? We saw that at one point, the workflow, just because we have the instruction that say so, right? It started reading the error messages, identifying the root causes, fixing the script and adjusting the inputs, testing how it would fix it, and then updating the corresponding rules, right? So it made a few examples and etc. And why does this happen? And why does, do AI agent have this ability to fix on the fly whatever is going? And in order to understand this and to explain this, we need to explain what self-annealing or self-healing means when we're talking about LLMs. Okay, so what does self-annealing process means and where does it come from and how does this connect to LLMs? So let's imagine that we're a blacksmith, right? And we want to create a blade. What happens? It happens that in the initial state, so in the state where our metal is very cold, our atoms, we can imagine as if they were randomly placed, right? Like this, okay? And then it's super difficult to do anything with this type of atoms because there is no structure and because we can't really do anything and otherwise it will break. So what do? We heat it up. And when we heat it up, the structure becomes more flexible and we can start manipulating the thing because, and this is an oversimplification, but atoms arrange in a very specific structure, right? And this, when we go here, and so when we kind of fix the structure of the atoms, is called self-annealing. Actually, it's called annealing process, okay? Then what does it happen? It happens that if this is not a blade yet, then eventually it will start cooling down once again. And then again, my structure will be all messed up. And then what happens is that we heat it up because our blacksmith never gives up. And then the atoms rearrange like this. And then eventually we can imagine that the end state is our perfect blade, okay? Atoms do not stay in this configuration, but for our example, we are going to do the hypothesis that they stay like this, okay? So what happens? Every time that we go through the process of so-called annealing process, we are sort of fixing the structure of the atoms. And why is this important? Because this is the process that actually Agentic Workflow use in order to improve themselves. And why are we going to say self-annealing right now? So in reality, the previous one was annealing. Because let's go in our practical example, the things that we did before, and it was, hey, I need an email that does X, Y, and Z, right? I had a simple stuff. So let's imagine that this is my simple house. Now what happens? What happens is that I did not give credentials. I did not fix the loop. I did not check if anything would happen. I did not make sure to give the proper template because I said, okay, I'll give it to you later and etc. So I gave my system a very rough idea of what I wanted. But now, every time that I was prompting, right, and that I was giving the system information, the system was better understanding what was my end in mind. And therefore, it started doing these little things that we have right here. So it started doing small improvement and be like, okay, so actually, you don't want just this little house, but you need a 3D house. And actually, to send the email, you need also a chimney. And to be honest, if you want to give some specific flavor to your customer, you also need some trees. And then eventually you end up with a things that is complete and robust. And you could see it right live when the agent told us, hey, by the way, your credentials are not working. Can you fix it? Or can you give me the JSON? And then it started building the house for us. So what do we mean? We mean that with this process, basically what the agent continuously do is that it will keep on going through loops, right? And what are these loops? The agent is going to diagnose that something actually is not working. It will propose a fix. It will then update its own document, right? And then it will retry, correct? Once everything is sorted, so once this black box finished and the agent has all of the information to proceed, what's going to happen is that it starts documenting all of the changes that it did. Just like we gave the JSON file, it understood that it needed some credentials and etc. And each cycle, these things becomes more robust, right? Because now the credential is fixed. But maybe the next time I want to send, something to not only a Google Drive, but I want to also send a presentation like an Excel file. And maybe it needs to build something else to enable that Excel sheet to be attached to the email, right? And it will just continue to do all of these things autonomously. Now, let's imagine that we ask the agent that it's something that we will ask later on, hey, please run every time at 5 p.m., right? The agent will not be able to have something internal or an internal clock that will allow it to run every time at 5 p.m. It will need some external services. And then we're going to be able to provide these external services. So the agent will be able to continuously improve and get better at the task that we want, the more we go on with this. And why is this very important? Because you should start thinking when you are building agents or when you are selling this agentic workflow to these as employees. And we did the example before, but let's make it very practical and let's refer to platforms so that it's even more clear to you what we refer to this. So let's imagine that you have two employees, right? You have employee A, and the employee A cannot fix anything without your intervention, right? It continuously makes the same mistakes. It continuously calls you. It just can't do enough unless you intervene. What is the problem? The problem is that at this point, with this type of employee, and by the way, if you run a business or if you have ever hired someone, this is one of the biggest bottleneck to the growth of a business. The problem is that if you, as a human, give a task to an employee, right? And then the employee that is supposed to actually deliver this task cannot do it and has to come back at you, then up until you go back with new instructions, then here you created a bottleneck, right? So you can literally imagine the workflow as something like this. And then all of a sudden, your pipeline is like this, just because you have to come back. And up until you come back, nothing moves, right? So as a business owner, you know this. As a new probably business owner or agency owner, you will find it very soon. But these employees are a burden, unfortunately. And this is a problem because they never learn from their own mistakes. And if we think in terms of platforms, right, we have that NA10 and Make.com and any other platform out there. You need every time to build a workflow from scratch, right? It's not that the platform is learning from its own mistake. And if sometimes, you were mentioning, hey, use this API key, right? And then the second time you tell the platform, hey, please connect to Apify. No, it doesn't work. You need to still provide the API key. The platform did not learn how to get connected to that API. Now, here on the other side, let's imagine that we have a superstar type of employee, right? So here I have an employee that every time that something happens, tries to solve it autonomously. And at one point, it just documents the solution and avoids repeating the same mistakes. But not only that, maybe it finds even problem that you are not even aware of, and then it supports you. So at this point, your pipeline, if before was like shrinking, now actually gets better, right? Because we are predicting things that may have happened and we solve them before they could even occur, right? So for this very reason, Agentic Workflow, it's much, much better than regular platform. And in my opinion, they will be the future and where businesses will move because they have this ability of continuously improving themselves. So the main takeaway is that over time, the AI agent will continue becoming better. You just have to ask it. So if I want the agent to go faster, I will go in Antigravity or Claude, whatever, and I will be like, hey, please, can you go faster? Can you go quicker? Can we make this smoother? I am paying too much. Can we find a way to make it cheaper and etc.? Mind you, of course, this has a chance of introducing a certain degree of error, right? Because we are touching something that works. So we just want to make sure that we have a specific threshold or levers per workflow that we want to improve. Ideally, you never go above the threshold of 5. So it means that your workflow needs to be at least 5 times better. And not just a couple like twice and etc. Because otherwise, as a rule of thumb, then it really depends on the type of processes. There is no, let's say, there is no fixed threshold that you should think about. Okay, if this is not 3.75, but ideally, it's like 5 times better. It means that the workflow could have been improved quite a lot. And it's a payoff for the probability of introducing an error that you have, because we know that we have stochasticity with LLM and we can control the architecture. However, they are never going to be accurate 100%. Now, before we continue building, we're going to ask ourselves, okay, what about the safety? And the rule of thumb is that we structured the framework and every other framework is going to be structured more or less in the same way, because it's just about the branding of the framework. But we want to store the keys and everything that is sensitive inside the .env file. We don't want the workflow to be able to modify API keys and credential unless we ask specifically, exactly for the things that we mentioned before. So if I give you the API keys to, Apify, I want to use them. Like, why would you have to change them, right? Then at that point, they just don't work anymore. And then here, let's imagine that you have, you are in a regular plan on Instantly and you have a threshold that you don't want to spend more than €1 because maybe you are testing something. And if you spend over €1, then there is any issue, right? So in this specific scenario, you don't really have a way to control how much these agentic workflow are running for. And let's imagine that you disappear, right? And you're not in front of your laptop like this, checking what the AI agent is doing. So at this point, what you want to do is you want to set some threshold, some security threshold that will enable the AI agent to stop whenever it overcomes them. So in a lot of platforms, like there is the possibility, like Apify and etc., to set this threshold manually inside the platform. However, if you don't have the chance, just make sure that you set it up like this. And just for you to see what I mean is that I tried firsthand what this means. I did not see this happening, right? And so I run this scraper, which is $1.5 per 1,000 leads for 23 amazing minutes, which means that I spent €10 on this amazing scraper just because I did not notice that this was happening. So when I tell you security, guardrails, threshold, like, trust me, set them up. The framework that I gave you has been carefully written to avoid you incurring in these things. And also, please always specify what your threshold is whenever you're running any paid scraper. And with that being said, we can move on. So with that being said, let's go build the second workflow. Before we start going into the building mode, let me give you a quick explanation of why you need an outbound strategy. Whenever we consult as a business other B2Bs, or whenever I do my one-to-one coaching programs with people that want to start selling AI services as consultant, AI automation, whatever that may be, one of the first things that we touch is how do we get clients? And my first answer is you need to get clients in the most reliable way, most easy way, predictable way possible. So the difference is always, one of the first conversations that I always have with people is, do we go with an inbound strategy versus outbound strategy? What does it mean? Outbound basically means that you are going to send emails to people, and inbound basically means that you are producing content, right? This is the very big difference. So what is the difference between the two? The difference is that inbound is a strategy that I call one-to-many, while outbound is a strategy that I called many-to-one. And why is that? Let's imagine that we are now producing this YouTube video. And let's imagine that 3 people are interested in this content, okay? So I don't have to produce a single piece of content for every single one of the person that is going to watch this video. And so my piece of content is going to be seen in the same way by person 1, by person 2, and by person 3. So for this very reason, one piece of content reaches many people. And this is a long-term strategy that is super difficult to make it work in an effective way because you don't have a proper way to measure, okay, if I produce a video, I know that 10 people are going to see it, right? Like you need to build an audience, it takes time, the content needs to add some sort of value, and so on. So if we talk about funnel, which basically is a shape that represents how many of the person interacting with your brand are actually buying. And this is the shape of a funnel, right? Let's make it a bit longer. And what a funnel will tell you is that, let's imagine that I have these 3, I have a lot of people that are going to fall in my funnel. Not every single individual will buy anything from me, right? Some may be on target, some may be off target, and etc. But those that will buy will fall all the way down here and eventually is right here. And what can you buy in this example? The content is for free. So you can either be a business owner interested in implementing inbound or outbound strategy, customer acquisition in general with AI in your business, or you want to start and scale your AI agency, and then eventually you jump in my one-to-one coaching. So this content, by definition, is not a funnel which is like this. By definition, my content is helping as many of you as possible to get running. So eventually you come and work with me. So it's this. Most of the content that I produce will never give me any single result. And it's fine, right? Because we are educating people, we are empowering people to get where they want. And eventually, if they find that the content helped them and it's interesting and so on, they eventually will work with me. So by definition, this is non-efficient, long-term, and does not pay as well as the other type of approach, which is the outbound. On the outbound strategy on the other end, and we mentioned that this strategy is a many-to-one, you have that your email campaign is going to go out in a personalized way for every single individual, meaning that every email that you're going to be sending will have, hey, first name, and then eventually we'll have something personalized that will be targeted for the person, so to make them understand that we did our homework and to increase the chance that they will actually want to answer this email and eventually buy our product. But what is the real difference? The real difference is that here, and I want to use the red to make you see it, I have metrics that I can track that I don't have on the other side, right? I have how many emails did I send? 10K. How many people opened it? Like 2,000 whatever. 25% conversion rate. How many clicks? 500. How many leads did I get? 100. And what is my conversion? 0.2%. So what does it mean? It means that whenever I'm building my funnel, which now it's going to be like this, I have a way to make this funnel even more efficient, because if I wanted to sell, let's imagine that here I convert 20, right? And we know that here I am sending 10,000 email every time that I am running my campaign, okay? So if I wanted to sell 40 units of whatever am I selling, audits, automations, whatever, how many people do I reach? Okay, I need to reach 20,000 people, right? So here I have a 2x factor. And then eventually also this one will do 2x. So the outbound strategy is pure math, right? And that's why it's so powerful. Let's imagine that I don't want to do this, but I want to say, okay, let me go back again to this funnel, and I will now want not to sell 10K, but I decide that whenever I send 10,000 email, ideally, I should not have 20, but I should have 40 leads that convert. What does it mean? It means that somewhere along the way of between where the emails are opened or to how many leads am I speaking and etc., this process right here needs to improve. And how can I improve? Either more qualified leads, so I need to scrape better. Either I need to improve my sales script, which is something that we consult and we help. So the way I'm selling to businesses, how I'm pitching their pain points, am I selling tools or am I pitching the destination and selling the benefits and so on and so forth. So you understand that just focusing on this, we are able to actually improve our revenue, which is king, right? Cash is king in any organization. So for this reason, outbound is the best, specifically when you start in the beginning. So how do we make an effective outbound strategy? We make it with an outbound engine. And this is what we're going to be building. We're going to be building with an agentic workflow that starts scraping the leads that we want. Let's imagine 10 CEOs from UK in the recruitment industry. Then we're going to store these leads somewhere. We're going to clean them, enrich them with information from the website. And the reason is that we want to eventually be able to generate what we call an icebreaker. So the first 2 lines of the email that are going to be personalized for the person so that we can increase the open rate and all of the things we discussed before. And then eventually we're going to insert these in an email marketing campaign tool so that we're going to be able to start mass sending our emails and therefore start showing our offer to the people. So with that being said, let's go to Antigravity. All right, so now that the business part is clear, we have everything we need to build this scraper actually and understand why we are doing it. So the first thing we do is open a folder. I have already created everything, so the folder is going to be empty and it's going to be outbound right here. So once you open it, there's going to be nothing. And the first thing that we're going to do is create the Gemini.md file. Perfect. So now the agent initialized the workspace and we can actually start prompting and start describing what actually we want to create. So let me just quickly move myself so you can see. Hey, I would like to create a outbound engine. And this outbound engine is composed of an initial scraper, which is an Apify scraper that I have already identified and that I would like to use in order to scrape my leads. Then eventually, I want you to store these leads inside a Google Sheet that has already the columns pre-populated with the same names of what you will find inside the scraper, and has on top an additional column, which is called icebreaker column, that is gonna be empty when you import the files the first time, because you will have to generate it later with OpenAI. Once you stored the data in here, I would like you to start scraping also the website that you will find with the data that you just scraped. And I need you to scrape the website per each of the leads that we're going to be reaching out. And the reason is because we want to use the information of the website in order to produce a so-called personalized icebreaker that we're going to be using in our email marketing campaign. And once you did that, I want you to add the icebreaker inside the Google Sheet so that I am able to have everything in one place and ready to be inserted eventually in an email marketing campaign tool like Instantly, for example. I would like you to give me a couple of options in which you would like to proceed for me to choose which is the best one. Please ensure that you need to have the following things in mind. It needs to be fast. It needs to be efficient. You need to be wary of token consumption. The maximum amount of leads that we're going to be scraping is 10. And the reason is because we're running a demo and I think we're going to be good with this. So at this point, we're just going to press enter with this gigantic prompt. And let me go back to where I was. And the reason why we do this is basically because we want to ensure that we give the agent as much context as possible in the beginning, for the agent to be able to give us the best possible outcome. And mind you, I already gave an structure or an architecture that I have in mind, which is what I draw in the Canva slides. So you will see that I mimicked with my prompt, everything that is there, right? Step by step. However, I also ask the agent to give me a couple of options. And the reason is because maybe the agent can run a research and find that there are best practices that I'm not considering, or it can come up with something even more efficient. So I want to use actually this agent also as an initial, sparring partner, let's say, in order to figure out, did I get the right idea or did I not? Cool. So the two things that I am seeing right here is that the first one is the modular assembly line, which basically means that there is no human in the loop, just to be clear. And the second one means that the speed tester batch processor, it's something that it's quicker, but has a little bit of issues if you, at least the architecture that it came up with, because it's not really reliable because it's doing everything at once. And I know that I might hit eventually some API limits and stuff like this. So I will just tell the AI agent to, and I will tell it right now, please proceed with option 1. And I will simply tell him also to ensure that you proceed with max 10 leads, and then we're going to be proceeding. Now, we still didn't talk about which Apify scraper we want actually to use, right? So the agent at this point will not have any way to understand what Apify scraper we want to use. And in case you haven't heard about it, Apify is this platform right here, which is simply a third-party platform where other people created these scrapers, which you can see them as like little tools that you can use that do a lot of various things and that you can use for a little bit of money. Like we're talking about cents most of the times. And so just as an example, I'm going now to console and then to Apify store. And just to walk you through, if I wanted to scrape something for Instagram, I could scrape anything right here. If I wanted TikTok or I don't know, even LinkedIn, which is a bit more difficult to scrape than TikTok, I could say I could have it here. Then I could have Apollo if I really wanted, and so on and so forth. So the scraper that we're going to be using, that by the way is this one, but you will also be able to find it inside the Notion file. So here we're going to just press it, and this will lead you directly inside the scraper that I wanted to use. So you can use it right here. If I'm not mistaken, by the way, this is a pay-per event. Generally speaking, these type of scraper work even without you having the Apify subscription that I have, by the way. If you see right here, this month I used around $17, right? But this should be a pay-per event, and you can check also all of the details right here of how much it costs. For 1,000 leads is like $2, and it starts, so you're gonna spend 2 cents. So most realistically, we're gonna spend 10 cents. Cool. So our agent right now proceeded and asked and gave us the implementation plan. So as you can see, we have a couple of important stuff to do. So for example, which API scraper are we using? And the credentials for the Google Sheet, the define the spreadsheet ID, so on and so forth, and the API key. So what I'm gonna be doing right now is simply taking all of these things and putting them all together in the chat. So once again, let me actually do it with you so you understand how to do it in case you've never done it before. So we are going to go and take everything. So the first thing that we want to do is to take the API keys of Apify. So we go back to Apify. The first thing that we do is we copy the scraper and we say Apify scraper to use, and we're gonna press this one. API keys. And now actually I don't want to edit the video 20 times, so I will just pop. Okay, so API keys, we're gonna go back to Apify, settings, API and integration, and you can go right here and call it Antigravity. I don't know if it's good enough. Then you're gonna copy. So which is basically, by the way, this button right here, you can copy it to your Antigravity. You can go back and then paste it. And this should be enough for our agent to have everything it needed. Now, we need to find the Google Sheet. So we're going to go back to our Notion. If you go to in here, you're going to be able to press the Google Sheet. And why is this useful? Because then here you're going to be able to see exactly how I map the column, right? So you can have everything exactly as I did it. And so now I can take the URL, so at the top, and then I can go back to Apify, to Antigravity, and say, okay, Google Sheet to use. And we're gonna press the paste the link. Then we're gonna tell the sheet you need to use is called Sheet 1. And as you can see right here at the very bottom, you're gonna see that it's called Sheet 1, right? My first sheet. Then it tells me that I need to create an OpenAI key. So I'm gonna go into OpenAI .dashboard or playground, whatever. We can write everything. I mean, anyway. So you're gonna sign in. So it will be here. Now I think it's signed in automatically. Eventually you press dashboard. You're gonna press the API key and then you're gonna create a new secret key. So this is called Antigravity test. Then create secret key and then you will have them. And then you're gonna go back to your Antigravity and you are just gonna paste them, right? So again, OpenAI keys, paste, and the last step that is left, which is pretty straightforward, however rather long, so I will spare it, is to create this credential.json. You're gonna have to do it in your Google console. So just go there, and then once you have created, you're gonna create here the file called credentials.json, and you're gonna paste your credential right there. I'm gonna do it, and then I'm gonna press enter, and once I've done it, I'm gonna come back and we can continue the video. Cool, so as you can see now, everything is working as per expectation. I have also created the credentials.json, and everything is proceeding smoothly. So the only thing that is gonna be left once we have this will be to do two things. The first things will be to run a test if we're actually scraping 10 leads or scraping more, and then to fix it. And the second thing will be to actually give the AI agent a template for the icebreaker, because we don't want to have a random icebreaker, right? We want to have something specific, customized, punchy, effective. And that's also what you want to review and why you don't want to have it fully automated. And in order to do that, we can go back to our Notion file. And then right here at the very, very bottom, I also gave you already the prompt that I would like to use for the icebreaker generation, which is, hey, we have scraped websites. This is your task. This is what you should be writing in the icebreaker. You will be able to find it, just copy paste it, okay? And then I gave some stuff for the rules that it should be following, the tone, and everything else. All right, so now that the agent is running, we can see that in our directives, we have created something called readme and also run outbound campaign.md, which again, as we were mentioning in the beginning, this just gives the markdown direction and instruction to the agent of what it should be doing, right? There is no code left right here. Where we have the code is where we were discussing before in the execution folder, which is all of these. And as you can see, we have .py. And so this is Python script and the JSON. So the JSON basically tells us, okay, this is an initial thing that I tried to run. So marketing agency, London, country code, whatever, CEOs, max items, which is the maximum 10 leads. This is the fetched leads. And mind you, all of this code has been written without us actually moving a finger, which means that the technical barrier to produce this is very low. What's really important is your ability to actually think about a problem that is worth solving and your ability to market this problem to businesses. Now, let me move myself for the last time because we are going to be inserting the last prompt and we are going to go back to our Google Sheet Notion in order to find it. And then we're going to be saying, hey, what I would love you to do now is you need to run the agentic workflow that we just created with the following thing. I want to reach out to 10 CEOs in the UK in the recruitment and staffing industry. And with the employee size of the company, which is 51 to 100 employee, I I would also love you to add the icebreaker to the Google Sheet that we just generated. And I would love you to follow the below prompt that I have created for you. You will notice that I also inserted in curly brackets some variables, and I would love you to fill out these variables with the data that you will find inside the Google Sheet. So an example is you will have first name, and the prompt will start with hey name, and I would love you to put the first name at the right place in the prompt. Great, now we're gonna also go back to our Notion and copy this, paste it here, and now we will be able to press enter, and then we're gonna see what it does and what is the result. So now I'm gonna press enter, I'm gonna position myself back where I was. Perfect, so the agent now finished running, and let's see what it did. So if I go now on Apify, I see, perfect, that the last run was successful and I got 4 results for 4 cents, right? And it lasted 4 seconds. So great. So I managed to get them from Apify, right? And here in the Google Sheet, I have everything. So name, surname, emails. These are phone numbers, company names in the recruitment space, company website and LinkedIn, job title, everything I want. Perfect. Let's go to the icebreaker. And amazing. Let's read what we wrote to Toby. So, how it looks. Hey Toby, love the focus on niche tech hires also into fintech solutions. Most likely it's something related to either a website post, either a blog post, or something like that. Wanted to run something by you. Hope you don't mind, but I spent some time looking through your site and noticed that the global recruitment seems important to you guys, or at least that's how it came across given the focus on cross-border team growth. I seem like a smart dude. I put something together a while ago and I thought it may help. Long story short, it's an outreach system that uses AI to find and qualify candidates based on live hiring signals, then reaches out with personalized messages instead of generic blasts. It costs just a few cents to run, converts well, and feels aligned with your commitment to innovate recruitment solutions. So, as you can see, this is the icebreaker, how the initial impression of my email and how it will come across. You see how personalized this is, how easy it is, and to read, how it seems like a human stuff, and etc. So everything that we produced so far is very, very powerful, specifically if we use it with this agentic workflow. And by the way, if we didn't like one thing, if we didn't like another thing, all we had to do was literally to prompt to our agentic workflow, or in this case, Antigravity, and say, hey, I don't like X, Y, and Z. Can you adjust it? Can you update it? And so on and so forth. As we mentioned, then creating this agentic workflow right now, it's rather simple. The only real technical barrier that you're going to have is actually the API credentials and a bit of, getting the hang of the platform, which will come rather fast, by the way. So the real thing now is not, okay, how can I build something? But the real skill set that you need to develop is, okay, now that I know how to build this, how do I get in front of clients my offer and how can I sell them? And by the way, now you will also have all of this for free in the first link down below. You can access this and I will give you exactly the prompt that I used, my files and everything. So this will be straight in your computer. And now that we're gonna build something even more complicated or more advanced, one of the questions that we're answering is, but actually, do we always need to run manually these workflows? Because what we built just now, which is an onboarding system, requires us to go inside an agent and then tell him, hey, I have customer A, send this email, and then do this. When we were operating with other platforms, or if you don't know and you're not familiar with na10 or make.com, we had a lot of possibilities, right, to run automations because we had 3 types of triggers. We had the manual trigger, which means we triggered this manually and etc. We had the event trigger, which basically means when something happens, then do this. For example, when in the CRM I move a person from status A to status B, then please adjust it. And then eventually the schedule-driven trigger, which means I want to do it at 8 a.m. every day for the rest of my life. So do we actually always need the manual trigger with agentic workflow? The answer is no, but there is a couple of things that we need to say, right? So in order not to have them like running manually and have them running on a different type of trigger and therefore on a schedule or on an event, we need to upload these agentic workflow in a cloud. But uploading them in a cloud has a couple of impact on your agent, at least as of now, right? So first of all, we don't upload the brain. So what does it mean? That the brain, so our Gemini and etc., it's not gonna go there, right? So we lose this decision-making part, right? Therefore, what does it mean? It means that our workflow will not be able to reason all of a sudden anymore, right? So it will just do A, B, and C, which is exactly what we will have in our implementation layer with our scripts. So what it will do is that we actually do upload implementation scripts, and as just mentioned, it will just limit a bit the ability of the AI agent to be smart. And we can upload the rules, but this is just for context, right? What is the difference right now? The difference is right now that we are not having an LLM anymore. We are just simply creating an API or our own API. And the reason is that we want to do that because therefore we will reduce stochasticity. As mentioned, the repercussion is the main one, that not being able to have the brain anymore. It means that also our agent.md scripts will not be working as per expectation anymore, right? So it will not self-anneal anymore. So one thing that I highly recommend is that before uploading anything in your cloud, just ensure that it's fully functioning. And by the way, just as an expectation, we know that we start with a workflow that looks like this, and then we go through a ton of iteration, or we mentioned the house example, right? And then after a ton of iteration, we have, I don't know, build a castle or something like this, right? So this is my castle. And then we have, I don't know, here, the trees and etc. So the expectation is that before we actually upload the agentic workflow in the cloud, this should be like sort of battle tested right before deployment. How do we do this? We're going to use a service. The service is called Modal. There are a ton of other stuff, but I just like Modal because it's super intuitive and it's friendly, beginner friendly, like really a lot. And it's born for agentic workflow, right? So with Modal, you will not have the need to know how to code. The AI agent will be able to access Modal by itself. And what you're going to simply do is you're going to ask to the AI agent in the chat interface to create a cloud function. And you will get a so-called URL, right? So a link. And basically all you need to do is you just need to ask the AI agent to use it and to just connect it, right? So it's as straightforward as that. So with that being said, let's go build the third workflow, which is our CRM. Let me start by showing you immediately what we're going to be building, so it's also more clear later why this is relevant. What you see in front of you is ClickUp. If you have never heard about it, it's a CRM platform, which basically is a place where you can store all of the information related to the customer of a business. And CRM stands for Client Relationship Management, something along the way. In here, why is this relevant? So here it's basically a database, right? And the reason why this is relevant is not really because you can automate fancy things and etc., but it's because this thing automates the sales process of a business, and you can see it from the status. So whenever a lead or prospect comes in, this goes inside the CRM in the intake thing. And then once you move this lead along your funnel, then it's meeting booked. So this means that the lead is waiting for us to have the meeting with it or awaiting proposal. And this allows the sales team to be aligned on what is the next step and how should we go there, right? And the thing is that a lot of businesses are leaking data and leaking alignment. So that is the actual ROI of this business. It's not simply the storing the information. So how does this work? We can simply go into Antigravity and say something along the way of, hey, please, I would need your help to do two things, actually. The first thing that I would want to do is you to add a new field inside the CRM. This is a new lead. The name of the company is called Giovanni Company, and the full contact name, it's Giovanni Beggiato. You can add the email, which is jobeggiato@gmail.com. And it's fine if you leave the assignee as empty. I would love you to add a due date as of today. And if possible, please also ensure that you're inserting in the CRM already a link to a Google Meet that you should be also scheduling inside my calendar according to my availability. Once you have done this, please move Stellar Enterprise from the status of proposal sent to the status of won. And therefore also send the onboarding email, please. Great, so we just gave Antigravity quite a lot of information that we should be seeing reflected in the CRM. And what is the power of this? The power of this is that, as you can see right now, I can prompt in natural language, literally, and this is not even a good prompt, right? Simple instruction, and what's gonna happen is that I'm gonna see all these information reflected in the CRM, because now this is also inside the cloud. So this is also one of the things that we're going to touch, which basically means that we're going to be able to call this system whenever we want. And whenever we have an event happening, then the cloud is going to be triggered. It's called a webhook in technical terms. And then some things are going to happen. In this case, whenever we move a lead from proposal sent to won, we will see that we will receive an onboarding email saying, hey, welcome to our business. Glad we work together. And then the only thing that you're going to have to do is simply to customize this template to ensure that you actually can customize it to either your business or to your client's business if you're selling these sort of services. So, by the way, all of the material is going to be available for free in the first link down below. And if you're interested, there is also the link to my Skool Community where I teach people how to actually sell these systems. Okay, so it seems like it succeeded. So what do we have? We have Giovanni Company. We have Giovanni Beggiato, my email, assignee is empty, due date is today, intake. We have a date updated, and we have a Google Meet link. Of course, it's a demo of Antigravity. So if I press, I can join the Google Meet link, and this is working. So everything for now worked as per expectation. Now, what I saw also is that Stellar Enterprises, it's actually moved to won. And now I want to see if I received the email, which I can see that I received. Hey there. Thrilled to work with Stellar Enterprises. This is an automated email, best the team. And this is phenomenal because you can customize these emails simply by providing to Antigravity or to the template that you will get your email, and this will be done automatically in simple natural language. So this is to say the technical barrier is very low and we can actually automate things just by prompting. So now that we saw how the system works, let me show you how you can actually build this agentic workflow from scratch. Okay, so the first thing that we do is we open Antigravity and we open the folder. Open folder. I have created everything already. So Antigravity, full tutorial, and CRM. And now that we are inside the folder, we can see it from here. So top left-hand corner. As you can see, there is nothing, but once we import our Gemini.md file, we're going to have all of our folders right here in a specific order. So the first thing that we're going to be doing is importing our Gemini.md file. Now we need to give the initial prompt that I will also leave available for free down below in the file. And what we are going to say is the following. Hey, I would like you to act as a CRM wrapper for my ClickUp CRM. And what I would like you to do is that I would like you to give me a plan on how do you plan on connecting to this CRM so I can validate it. The end in mind is basically that I need to be able to control the CRM prompting you. So ideally, you should be able to, first of all, add and modify any potential leads. You should be able to add Google Meets whenever I see fit in order for me to have something already in place and I just have to send it to my customers. You should be able to add information to every single column that is currently available in the ClickUp CRM. You should be able to modify the status of a lead, and then based on that, take some specific action. And what I would like you to do is also to connect to my Gmail service, because I would like also that whenever I move the status of a lead from anything to won, I would like this lead to receive a custom email that I will be providing you later on. Can you please give me 3 possible ways in which you plan to do this? What I'm thinking is, I don't know, maybe we check if we can do it via API, or can you check if you can do it via MCP, or can you check if there is any other simpler way to do it? And so then I will be able to decide what is best for you. Okay, so basically, what did we give? This is a very general prompt where on top level, I just described what I would like this system to do for me. And I did not give a lot of actually guidance on how to set it up or from a technical standpoint. I just gave the business context of what I would need. And on top of this, I also gave some top line information of how I am thinking that this may be connected, which is, API MCP. And I will tell you now what these are in case you've never heard about these. But this is not even relevant because the system would ideally tell me that there are these things. So basically, API, if you have never heard about it, is simply a secret key, let's call it, that you can use in order to connect to a third-party service. So instead of creating a CRM like from scratch yourself, you can connect to other platforms. In our case, it's ClickUp. And this allows Antigravity or any other service. If you were using N810 before, Make.com, it's the same stuff. And this allows your service then to come in contact with this third-party platform and use it / interact with it, right? On the other end, MCP, what it is a common language, I would call it the English of apps, that apps have in common in order to speak one another, right? So it's simply a way that we can access all of the functionality and Antigravity can access all of these functionality. However, and I don't want to go into useless details, it consumes a little bit more tokens, so the context will be a little bit bigger. Amazing. So now you see that we have the so-called possibility of having this option review for the CRM. So the first one is the native agent application, which is recommended. So I build the tools, I am the wrapper. And here, as you can see, this is the recommended one because it has zero external costs. Of course, we're talking about marginal costs, right? Nothing is zero. So it's only a matter of which platform you prefer to use. But it's virtually very cheap because it's cents when you run these things. The second option is the MCP integration way. So as you saw, it says, okay, I could connect with a ClickUp MCP server to give me native capabilities and etc. And then it also gave us the hybrid option, which is to use, Make.com or N810 in case you have automation that are already existing. So let's not forget that the only thing that we need to do in order to be able to connect to your Make.com or N810 is simply to tell Antigravity, hey, use that automation to do the changes that I wanted. Of course, in terms of agentic workflow, it's much better to have everything native, so handle directly from the agentic workflow itself because it's much more convenient. So now let's imagine that I don't really understand anything, okay? And this is what I would be saying just because I am relying on the agent or the IDE to support me. Hey, so I don't understand any of that, and I don't really know what most of these means. However, the solution that I would like you to choose is the best option that you think it's the more appropriate for you to manage this. Because the end in mind is not for me to be able to interact again with the platform. Ideally, I would want you to do most of the work and I would have simply to prompt you. So think about the solution that you provided me. Think about if there is any better way that would allow you to have a very granular control and over every field that we have inside ClickUp. And once you found the best way, please follow that and let me know. So here, I did not give any other valuable information, right? But what is it, the thing that I said? That I don't want to interact with ClickUp myself. I mean, I will be able to anyway. I just want the agent to interact with the platform. And now let's go inside ClickUp and see what actually we mean. Okay, so this is the thing that we meant when we were talking about the CRM, and these are our columns. So we have the name, which is the name of the column. So Stellar Enterprises, test agent task, whatever. It's company name, right? Contact name, as you can see, I have a lot of imagination. So Joshua Smith, Joe Smith, John Smith, etc. Contact email, already a lot of imagination also here. So email@email.com. Up until I got my email right here, because I would want at one point to test if the system that I'm building actually works. And therefore, I want to check it with my own email. Assignee, due date, status. This is basically the typical funnel that we follow in any coaching or service business. You have, generally speaking, that your customers, when they fall in your funnel, and allow me to draw it like this, you are going to have an intake, which means that the customer comes in and they are overall interested in having a chat with you. So here, maybe they completed the form, they liked the post, and then they checked your profile and so on and so forth. So this is the intake part. Then you go to the second part, which is the meeting booked. So they are waiting to talk to you. The meeting still did not happen, but they are ready to start learning more information. here we make the hypothesis that the meeting went well and we managed to identify them as qualified leads that we were willing to work with, and then we want to sell them a proposal. Then here it's when the proposal is sent. And why is this part important? Because the difference between a waiting proposal and proposal sent, and also the difference in terms of days between meeting booked and awaiting proposals or when the meeting actually happened, has a strong impact on sales. So I don't want to give you too much overwhelm with data, but the faster you can answer to a lead and the faster that they can receive the proposal, the warmer they are, and then the more likelihood you have that they will convert. And why these systems and CRMs are useful is because the ROI is actually here, right? In the management process and ensuring that all of the sales team is actually up to speed. Because now this is a simple stuff, right? And we can enjoy playing around with it. But here we will have that this assignee is going to be a salesperson, and we're gonna be able to track what is the performance in various ways. And mind you, this is a very simple CRM. So what you would do in case you're selling it to customers or you are applying it into your own business is I would recommend to take this template and add at least other 5-10 fields, right? Because you want to have all of the available information of your customers inside. With that being said, I was mentioning the proposal sent, and then after it's won or lost is if they paid or didn't pay. Do not ever move a lead to or prospect it's on the top of the funnel, lead is in the very bottom, and etc. Do not ever move it before they paid you money. And then we have a meeting link and then the date updated, which is very important because then we know that if we are actually following up or our sales team is doing it on the things that they are supposed to or not really, correct? So this is the intent of the things. And what we want is simply to have everything automated so that we don't have to spend time on this. So imagine now that I were to switch this to one, I would not want to send like a, custom email because you want to reinforce the things after the purchase happens, right? So saying, hey, great choice, pumped to work together, and maybe you can sell them a customized VSL that you prepared and so many other great stuff that might just enhance the perception that these customers have towards you, right? So yeah, okay. So everything is automatable and should be automated because your team / your clients should focus only on high revenue things. And this is, by the way, part of what I do with my own company and what I also tell agency owners once they hit the 10K a month revenue that they should be implementing on their own business. Because before that, I also do a lot of coaching for people that want to start and scale an AI agency. And let me tell you that before you hit the 10K a month, you don't need any CRM. It's fine, a Google Sheet, and handle it manually. Good, so now we had the implementation plan with everything all proposed, user review, architecture, and now we see, right, that we are asking the ClickUp API, ClickUp Team ID, ClickUp List, Google's credentials, path. And so now, when we press proceed, it will just be a matter of us providing these details to the agent so that it can act in our behalf. And let me quickly show you how you're going to be able to, for example, find the API key in ClickUp, but then I am just going to do the thing and then give you the end result, right? Actually, let me not do it. Let me say proceed, and you will see that at one point, the agent itself, if I didn't provide all this information up front, will ask me to provide it the information, and then we can do it together, right? In the meantime that the agent is still running, look at how great and structured this is once you have initialized the workspace in the right way. So the phase 1 is preparation and configs, and if we read how the agent is thinking, we see that it started creating the telling us that a dependency is missing, which is the credential.json. And by the way, this is how you're going to be able to connect to your Google account, for example, right? So the second phase will be the execution script. And as you can see, this is great, but we also have on the left-hand side that all of these Python scripts, like you don't have to write these yourself. Like this is pretty much a disruption in the industry of AI automation, because at the end of the day, if you ever tried, even AI automation in the drag and drop sense, they are codes, they are JSON codes. So if you highlight your old NA10 automation and you copy paste it into your browser, you will see that that is code. But all of these lines of code now are automatically generated. So this is literally one step further. And this will be most likely where the automation industry / agentic workflow, however you prefer to use these fancy terms, but this is where the future is heading to. So us interacting with an IDE, okay? Potentially, this might even move to drag and drop, but the thing that it matters is that right now, the agent can take care of most of the stuff itself. Good, so great. So this is just to say, We have so many Python scripts right now, and we saw that here I have built the CRM wrapper to turn it on. I need you to add ClickUps and Google credential and read the attachment CRM setup.md, edit the .nv file with your keys, and add the credential.json. So I'm going to do probably just the, .nv file with you, where I can simply, ClickUp API key and team ID and team list. And then I can do the rest and cut the video. So to find the ClickUp API key, we just go right here. I haven't found these in a while. So settings, that might be. Then I am pretty sure that on the left-hand side here, we should be having something along the way of ClickUp API. And perfect. Here, if you wanted an API key, I'm pretty sure that there is a button that says generate, and you would be able to generate your API key. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to press regenerate, and then I'm going to copy these, right? And also, what I'm going to do is and let me go here, I'm going to take a screenshot of this and say, hey, the list is on the client relationship management. And probably I'm also going to take a screenshot of this just for the Antigravity to understand me better. So instead of adding them here, I'm lazy. So what I want to do is I want to do this. So I'm going to copy it. And then one thing that I might say is, okay, here is the list. It's called Client Relationship Management. The API keys are, and then I can simply type it here because instead of going here, because what I'm going to say is at the end, which is the thing that I always say, please, I provided you the missing information. Now do all of the changes yourself and let me know once it's done. And this is the way I like to proceed. Again, I want to manage the agent, right? I don't want anymore to go into the details. I just want to ensure that I'm providing the right input for the agent to be steered in the right direction and achieve the business result that I want. Fantastic. So as you can see now, I have that my prompt is still here, so it's doing everything by itself. And I have also provided the credential.json. And inside my env file, I have also provided all the relevant information that it needed in order to proceed. And so the only thing that now is left for us to do is to wait and see if we actually nailed the thing and got the result that we wanted, or if the agent will need other additional information in order to be fully functional as we were expecting. Okay, so the agent finished, and now we can try and see if this works. We will follow the Elon Musk prompt that that we got provided. And so let's try and see if it works. So, hey, add a new lead for Elon Musk, Elon at Tesla, interested in AI automation, and also add a booking link for the meeting in Google Meet. All right. And now we are going to see if this actually worked or not. Okay, so it's still thinking. However, we start seeing the first stuff populated, right? So Tesla, Elon Musk, Elon at Tesla. I don't believe this is the email, but if it is by any mistake, like big up. And now what the system is doing, it's actually working on creating the link that we will be able to then use. And if you can see, it's still working. So fixing Google Calendar script, removing attendees constraints, because what was the issue that it found alone, by the way, that, and if you're going to see if you read the thing, that I could not add the invitee to the meeting. And it didn't come back to me asking me to fix it. However, it just simply added it and ensured that it could take the next steps. So it seems like it updated. And if I go now in my CRM, I can see that actually I have it. So there we go. This is the booking link. And if I press, we're going into the calendar and we have the meeting and boom, very good. So can we join it? Yes, we can. The issue is that I now want to add one more automation, which is if I wanted now manually to move the status from this to 1, right? Or anything to 1, I want also something else to happen, which is sending an email to a customer, right? Because this would be so much valuable and would remove so much manual activity from the sales team that we could interact both ways, which means that Antigravity with ClickUp with Antigravity, because then we could optimize the whole flow, right? What is the issue? The issue is that right now, if I do anything, like moving this and etc., nothing happens. And why is that? Because right now, the workflow is not living on a cloud where I can call it or the cloud can listen to my workflow to understand if an event, which basically means that something changed, right, have happened. But what is happening is that this workflow is living now only inside my laptop. And so what I need to do is I need to push this system or this workflow, this agentic workflow, any fancy term you prefer, but I need to push it in a cloud. And we are going to be using a service for this, which is called Modal. By the way, I don't have any affiliation. They are an amazing service. They are virtually cheap because I have been using this for a day, 62 calls and 0.1 cent on the free plan. As you can see, I am not paying. So this is just an amazing service. I would highly recommend it. There are others that you can use. However, this is my recommendation. And what do you need to do? You need to create something like this, which is Monitor CRM webhook. And you need to create it connecting your Antigravity with your model so that this eventually will live and you will be actually able to see that everything here worked as per expectation. And if nothing happened, you will just see the 200, which means that, it just listened to the event, it succeeded, but it didn't change anything because it did not perform any task, and therefore you will not consume anything, right? What is it and how does this work? Now, if you remember, when we were in ClickUp, we were going into the secret/API key, we would generate something and blah, 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 all of those difficult stuff. With Antigravity, it's super simple because the things that you're going to have to go into Antigravity is just to prompt that it should be connecting to Modal. So again, the most important thing when you work with Agentic Workflow is not really to know the technical nitty-gritty details on how everything works under the hood. It's just to know what is the point you're trying to solve and how is the system supposed to be behaving. Because if we know also the service, then we can, again, and I will draw it again just because it's very clear, we can directionally give the agent the right, path so that it can go straight and achieve our goals. So what are we going to do? We're just going to go into Antigravity once again and say, hey, please, now I would love you to connect Modal, because what I would like to do is that I would like this connection that you have with ClickUp to live on a cloud. And the reason is that what I'm trying to achieve is that I'm trying to achieve the state in which if I change the status from anything to 1, ideally, I would love you to send to the email that is attached to that specific lead. I would like you to send an email, which is an onboarding email that you can create, customize, and decide what you prefer to send. And so how I would like this to be set up is basically as a trigger event. So I don't want that the connection with Modal that you're going to create will be a polling mechanism, which basically means that I don't want you to run at a specific interval of time. I want you to be connected with ClickUp in a way always and understand whenever an event happens. And whenever that event happens, I want then this automation to be triggered. While you achieve this, also please ensure and let me know in case I misunderstood if a connection like this would mean that I am paying tokens in case nothing happens, or if I understood properly, which is that if nothing happens, I'm not spending any money. Again, this is just tokens are cheap, specifically with a prompt. This is a very long one. Ideally, specifically software engineers will know that this is not the best prompt. This is not a good prompt even. But what I'm trying to prove here is that your ability to prompt can even be average, but you, with the average ability to prompt, can achieve business results for which businesses would actually pay for. Because a lot of businesses will need these systems. And if you understand how they work as a system, then you can actually implement them into those businesses and you can close that gap. We have a deployment plan. We can go on and click proceed. And what it will ask is, it will ask again our credentials, our stuff. And then once again, probably, actually, it's going to be able to query Modal alone without us needing to provide credentials because we use the same account. So this is one thing that we will be validating. However, once this is achieved, what you will see is that I'm going to simply go to ClickUp, move the things to 1 and see what actually happens. Great. So now we have the results. Deployment success, triggers success, cost confirmed. It's actually 0 token spent per polling. Always on, it works. Always on, it works even when your computer is not there. And then I have the walkthrough. So here it basically told me how it did it and what it built. So what I can actually see here is that I have now a CRM wrapper agent created 3 minutes ago. And this actually means that my app is actually live on the cloud. And if I now go inside the CRM in ClickUp right here, and let me try to move this, which is Stellar Enterprises, because it has my email connected. I think I'm not able to see it just because I'm not refreshing. So let me just refresh real quick. And then I think my email, my contact information, and everything else should be appearing. And okay, it did. So what I want to do is I want to see if by changing this to 1, I actually get an email in my Gmail account. And I received it. I can see that this is a Stellar Enterprise email. Hey there, we're thrilled to work with Stellar Enterprise. This is an automated confirmation that we are started your onboarding best the team, and 0 minutes ago. But now, if you stayed until the end, I'm going to give you one last nugget that will make everything much better. So on the top right-hand corner right here, you will have something called, and my arrow does not go there, so it's here. It's called Open Agent Manager. And this is super important. And why? Because now what we have is that we have our CRM, we have our conversation, and etc. And pressing a plus right here, right? Or either you have it right here, it's the same stuff. So you can open another chat and we can call a so-called reviewer subagent. And what is reviewer going to do? This reviewer, it's going to help us in reviewing all of the code that we created. We're going to ask the reviewer to fully rearrange the directives so that they make sense. We're going to ask the reviewer to document everything. And this reviewer will just improve overall our script accuracy, right? So what we're going to say is something of the sort of, hey, please act as a sub-agent reviewer for the overall agentic workflow that we just created. What I would need you to do is I would need you to go through each of the, through all of the code and make sure that you are documenting everything that we did and ensuring that the Python script are as efficient as they could be and that everything that we did is documented on the directives without redundancy and giving these directives the right name. If you see fit, please change also so that I can have immediate clarity whenever I'm reading any of those to what actually the directive is doing. On top of that, if you see fit, you can either remove some directives or add some others in case you think that some things should be split in different directives because they make more sense. And now I'm going to run this agent and I'm going to show you once this is finished, the end result, and which is going to be actually the workflow that I'm going to share with you. Okay, so this is the end result. I will now go full screen, removing the chat with the agent. And as you can see now, everything was recreated and renamed accordingly. We add some stuff. We kept some other the same, like for example, the Modal app.py and etc. But what we have now is that we have 2 different directives, one for the CRM automation and one for the onboard deals. And what does this mean? It means that now we have created 2 different directives, which is basically 2 different SOPs, one for the CRM and one for the onboarding email, which also means that whenever we want to templatize something or we want to document something, we learn 2 things. To document, we need to call a sub-agent. To templatize, all we need to say is to the agent, hey, I need this and that. So in this case, if I wanted to templatize the onboarding email and say, okay, I don't like the onboarding email that I received, I want you to say, hey, name of the company, thrilled to start working together. This is the link to our share folder. You can start reviewing this material. The team will come back to you as soon as possible. And Samantha, I don't know, will call you. All you need to do is simply go to the agent and tell the agent, hey, I would like this to be the new template. And then you document and everything will be stored for you in here. Let's now start with the proposal generator. So workflow number 4. Once again, for the millionth time, I guess. So we're going to go on Antigravity, full tutorial, and now I just renamed them. So I cleaned them up. So we're going to go into workflow number 4, which is the proposal. So as you know, same stuff as usual, imported our file, our agent.md and initiate the workspace with agents.md. And as usual, we're just going to wait that the workspace will be initiated. Perfect. And now we will go with something along the way of, hey, so I would like to create an automated proposal generator. What I would want to do as of now is then I would like to paste in here the script of the meeting minutes. And then I would like you to generate a proposal for my clients. And ideally, we can have something standardized so we can go back and forth up until we get something decent. And I may also be able to provide you a template. However, I would want to have this done with Gamma.app. And so ensure that you create the right structure so that I can get you eventually the API keys and help you out with the connection. Let me know the next steps once you have created everything successfully. Fantastic. So now we are sending this. So basically, my intent now is to create a proposal generator for you. I can do the initial part in the video, however, otherwise the tutorial will be infinite hours long. But basically, I want to give you the difficult part, which is the connection with Gamma, so that you can have something that is ongoing and you can take care of, connecting it to your own Firefly or, Fathom or whatever you're using. And it's as simple as going here and saying, hey, I would like to connect then this workflow to my Fathom. So whenever I finish a meeting, I get the draft of a proposal. Can you please prepare it for me? And then we're done, right? So this is what actually it will require once we have decided that this workflow is good enough or not. Now, let's see if we can go with something standardized or if we just let the agent go with the proposal by itself. Ideally, if you do something business ready, but I think it will be great for you because then it will be very custom according to what you want. You should ideally have something that is already pre-populated, right? With some stuff like, the About Us section that can be something that you actually keep the same every time, right? So why you should work with us, what do we offer? And then the only part that you should ideally customize are the offer and the pitch for the pain points and then the pitch for the solution, right? So those are the things that I would recommend if I were you to implement once we're done. But that's totally up to you. Now let's see what it said. So I've set up the proposal generator, rule, implementation process, minutes, extracting data. Please paste the meeting minutes script you mentioned. I will save it too and run the generator to verify the structure. Great. So let me now go to my Fathom and take a meeting minute. All right, I dumped the transcript now, and then I'm going to press enter. Of course, it's in Italian, and now I'm going to blur the name of the client, but this is how it works, right? So we are now giving this, and actually this may be also one step more difficult because this was my last meeting, which was with an Italian customer. So I actually want to see if the AI agent is able to recognize that this is a different language and eventually how it will behave when it's time to generate the proposal. In case you guys are just going to get an Italian proposal, like, top notch. Cool, so the structure is ready once you have your Gamma API keys and potentially an OpenAI key for the text extraction, we can make it fully functional. So back to Gamma. Let's see where the API keys are. Okay, found them. Create API key. Name, we're going to call it Antigravity. This is your API key. Please keep a copy. Fantastic. Gamma API keys here. As you can see, by the way, this is live. First time we're creating a proposal. I'm just doing it for you. You have, by the way, a lot of other systems that you can use. A free one, it's Google Slide, by the way. So super nice. It's free. You get a link, you press it, and then it's fine. If you want something super professional, you can use PandaDoc, and you will have inside PandaDoc also the ability to enable payment. This is another one. Literally, I just wanted to try this with you, and we're gonna see the quality of this right now. So it's not like I pre-made everything, and as you can see, it's clearly also fairly new also from the API that I never created. But I'm very curious to see what happens and how it's gonna go. I have the API, but I'm having trouble locating the official Gamma API documentation to know if it's correct. My search tool is returning me. Could you please help me out? Now, this is the Gamma documentation. However, I just want to make one point clear with you. So whenever you're trying to use an API or you're using an LLM or an IDE in order to scrape a website and etc., what I tend to do is I tend to copy everything and I tend to paste it, right, inside the chat, because what they do generally is that they are using some sort of scraping tools. I'm not even sure what they're using, but they tend not to be able to read the documentation, specifically if you have drop-down menus or stuff like that. So what I tend to do is I tend to go inside the page and then I tend to give immediately the raw input to the LLM, because this also decreases the amount of mistakes that the LLM can do, right? And why is that? Because we're not then first scraping and then giving it. I'm just giving it to you as a raw input. And you can see that actually it worked at the first time, right? So integrating Gamma API, user provided API docs, now implementing the client standards, and then it's proceeding. So this is also to say that this little back and forth is amazing because it will just enable us to interact with the AI agent in a way that it makes it more efficient for both parts. Okay, so it seems like it succeeded. So save meeting minutes to blah, 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 run this, and then run this. Now, I don't really like it. I'm not a fan of this sort of structure. So I'm like, can we have this workflow in a way that I simply paste the meeting minutes and you take care of the rest? Ideally, I just want to have the proposal ready and no other inputs on my end, right? And this is important because, as mentioned before in the theoretical part, we want to give the agent as much flexibility as possible because we don't want to, always have to do stuff ourselves when we can have the agent do it for us, right? That's the end in mind. So what's now going to happen is that I'm trying to simplify. So the agent is giving me a proposal and I'm now trying to simplify whatever I received because I was not really super happy with the end results, right? Okay, it seems like now it created the paste and go, whatever this may mean. So actually, verified. All right, actually, we have the presentation ready. So now, of course, we can fix the images, but proposal for, then we have the visibility dilemma. That's actually what we discussed in the call. That's insane. SEO enhancement, small targeting. By the way, with my AI agency, we're doing customer acquisitions. So anything that is related with cold, outbound, inbound strategy on the marketing campaign, building a funnel, also on social media. If you haven't seen it, I published a 3-hour masterclass on how to build a LinkedIn personal brand. I got paid $10,000 for that, so highly recommended to go check it out. Following a VIP in the US. Perfect. There you go. Look, technical infrastructure, timeline, investment. Okay, this was clearly made it up. There you go. On fire. We can also, oh my days. I love this. Okay, fine. Like, let's imagine that now we want this. We can actually go inside. We for sure don't want $1,000, by the way, or euro, by the way. It seems like too little. Anyway, now we could just start interacting, right? Now it's that simple. Now we could say, okay, whenever an events happen, then do this. Now do that. Or if we're satisfied with the output, we're just going to import it and be like, okay, find a way to standardize this, or is there the possibility of me providing you a template that it's pre-populated and you're just adjusting few fields and so on? Can we make the images more professional? So now imagination is really the only things that's stopping you. And let's try with another a proposal because I want to see if this works. Okay, let's try with this. I'm actually pretty excited now to see what's the thing. It's another one in Italian. I am so astonished, by the way. Proposal for... There you go. Now, you see, I just asked to adjust slightly the images also. Comprehensive work, timeline, investment. Of course, I changed it because I can't. But wow. Wow. Absolutely fantastic. So yeah, this works. And it actually gives you a link that you can send straight away. So all you have to do now, it's just go through iteration processes where you're just simply gonna refine this and make it as clear and nice as possible for your customers according to what you like and etc. But I mean, again, you just have to prompt it, right? So just for you to see, once again, we have that the rules here, it's how the generation of the proposal should work, right? Client, problem, proposed solution, scope of work, timeline, and investment. And you can change it if you want. And then here it's the process. I love this, absolutely. Let's go to the last workflow. Last workflow, and actually workflow number 5, we're going to build the in automated invoice follow-up. And it's interesting because I thought initially to create a separate folder, right? But now what I decided to do is that I actually wanted to show you what I meant in the beginning with the best use case for agentic workflows to have everything right under the same umbrella. And the reason is because now I'm going to use ClickUp again to create this automation. And therefore, this being a CRM automation, I just wanted to show you how you could actually create it yourself, right? And so how you can push your agentic workflow to the next level, specifically when you're selling them to customers, right? So in order to do that, I went back in ClickUp. I created another list called invoices. And in here, I just put name, assignee, the date, my email, the number of the invoice, and then eventually also the mockup of the PDF with a bunch of information and stuff like this, right? Build to me, so that the intent that I have in mind is to create an automation that basically takes everything that is inside here, PDF included, and attaches it to the email that we're gonna send, right? Now, let's start building the automation. And in order to do that, I'm gonna go with this initial prompt. So, hey, I want now to evolve the CRM automation because right now I'm gonna add a new automation in this same workflow. What I am trying to build now is a totally different things versus what we built before. So please be careful not to override what we already created, but to create new things. We're now trying to create an agentic workflow that automates the email to all of those clients that did not pay my invoices on time. And in order to do that, I have created in ClickUp, in the same ClickUp that you have in here, right? Another another list. And this list now, it's called invoices, and you can access it, right? So inside this list, you will find the name, the due date, the client email, the invoice number, and the PDF attached. And what I would need you to do is that I would need you to create a sequence of 3 emails, right, that are going to be sent to the customer whenever the due date is yesterday, or it's 7 days ago, or it's like 15 days ago, versus, of course, today. And you need to send this email to the client email that you find inside ClickUp. And eventually, I would also like you to attach the PDF to this email, right? Once you have done this, then we will proceed with the next steps. Please create also 3 very short but very concise templates that you can use in order to create this follow-up emails, like this sequence of 3. But ensure that in all 3, you are referencing both the name, the invoice number, and also you are attaching the PDF. Fantastic. We're just going to shoot and let's see what plan does Antigravity give us. Perfect. One thing that's very interesting is, as you could see now that we closed the project, because then we created a workflow number 4 and then we reopened it, it started once again to make sure that it was using the right framework, which is the RBI framework. And then it then started with the planning mode. And then it also, which is very interesting, it analyzed all of the scripts to check if there is something else, right? Now, it's going to be interesting that we have Modal inside here, and then we're going to be able to already have Modal there, right? So what I want to try is now I want to try to see what happens when I actually push two different things in Modal. What I'm expecting is that I'm going to have, right, two Modal triggers, which is most likely what's going to happen. Okay, now just because the agentic workflow had already a lot of our data, so successfully implemented and verified the automation, updated, created invoice, created rule invoice, verify with a dry run. You can see the details in walkthrough. Perfect. So what I'm going to say is, okay, please then let's make sure that this is working properly. So you should be already seeing that there is an unpaid invoice that I positioned as such in order to start a trial. And there is also an email. So just send an email to that client email and let's see if I receive it. We're just going to wait and see what actually happens and if we are able to actually receive everything. All right, it says that it is executed correctly. So in my email, invoice is now due. Hi, this is a friendly reminder that was due yesterday. Please find it attached. Phenomenal. Correct. So, okay, like now what is the thing? For sure, you don't want to say this to a client, right? But not even if they didn't pay you. But yeah, now the only thing the other thing that you can do is that you can actually modify the template yourself just by typing here. Now I want to do one other thing, which is the following. So, hey, okay, so right now I need you to do two different things. So the first thing that I would like to do is that you create a cloud function in Modal, and you are just going to ensure that this workflow runs every day, I don't know, at 9 a.m. And for all of the invoices that are not in the right, that are overdue, according to the 3 days or intervals that I gave you. So yesterday, 7 days ago, and 14 days ago, I want you to automatically send this thing. So whenever this runs, which means that you should create a scheduled trigger. And then ideally, I want you to do another thing, which is I want also for testing purposes to make sure that this works also when I modify something manually on ClickUp. So you should also in some ways behave like a wrapper in ClickUp and make sure that whenever I modify something manually, with the same interval that I gave you. So again, with yesterday, 7 days ago, and 14 days ago, it works exactly in the same way. So ideally, the end state is a workflow that works both manually with me modifying something in ClickUp and with automatic schedules in Modal. And we're going to see what happens. All right, so it seems like it worked. Let's go and validate. So Modal, real quick. Perfect. So we have that the webhook is actually active. Fantastic. And so this should actually be good enough. And this is in 15 hours, which is correct. And now what I would like to do, actually, let me see if I press run now, ideally, and eventually it should start scheduling something for me. And in the meantime, I also move this to here and let's see if this works. Okay, so I received one. Cool. So it's probably the one that I triggered with ClickUp. So let me just revalidate if this is the case and if everything works as per expectation. Perfect. So this is the ClickUp one. Now, I think I was at 14 days. So let me just make sure that I'm now running the model. Run again now, schedule an intermediate run. So it's running. Boom, there you go. So this actually works. This actually works both ways. So now every day we're going to be, now I need to deactivate. Otherwise, every day I'm going to be receiving emails. But yeah, so this actually works. And that's that. So thanks a lot for making it through the many hours of actually Agentic Workflow course. The skill set that you have right now is extremely in demand. And it will be most likely what will help you either succeed in the short-term future, whether you are a consultant, whether you are a business owner trying to implement it in your own business, and whether you are a freelancer just getting started. So if you like this sort of stuff, make sure to check the first link in the description down below. It's the 101 coaching roadmap that you have with me to scale or start your AI agency and we make sure that you reach 10K or 30K or more within the next 90 or 180 days. With that being said, go crush it, and I hope you enjoy it.